the Swerdlow critique on his sort of thing, and then I'll join in from you with there. Start.
Okay, so we looked at Swerdlow a few years ago briefly. I've just looked through it again now. I've got 3 of the books. One's on world history. The other one is called Montauk Alien Connection. And the other one is this True Blood, Blue Blood text, which you were in particular looking for. And you say he's very good on the reporting of mind control. I mean, obviously he was a Montauk Pine Gap insider. So he did have a lot of key insider information. And of course, when I'm going through it, I'm very much aware that a lot of the material is in fact corresponding to a lot of other people's material who are of people who are reporting on this kind of ET conspiracy theory.
Yeah, you mentioned before.
Phenomenon.
You mentioned before an important thing just before we started recording about how Swerdlow talks about the whole God mind thing and the programming and all that sort of stuff, which is, it's all accurate, but the thing is, it's all in the image of Dracos, because the Dracos are all about God mind, because they don't have a soul and centre. Us humans, we have a soul and centre, and none of these people talk about centering, okay?
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And Swerdlow doesn't. He talks all about God mind, and that's where I basically sort of broke off from his information going, well, sorry, this goes a bit deeper than just the mind. And although he's basically got things right in saying, hey, forget this whole ascension thing, you can ascend anytime you want. It depends if you do the work on yourself or not. Now, that part is absolutely 100% accurate, but it's not about working on your mind. It's about working with your whole body and getting centered, because all that trauma-based mind control, all the memories, it's stored in your body, not your fucking brain. They just split your brain into different personality alters that can be separated from each other, so they can trigger Manchurian candidate.
Yes. So hence we have the metaphor of, the pomegranate, the marigold, the beehive, the honeycomb rather, in terms of having fractured pieces of mind, and the body mind, or the centric energy, or the soul, the solar circulation or wheel of the body, also called yugur or yoga, is of course the key to undoing all of that stuff, which I suppose is why they keep all the cultural programming to maintain this 6-9 head body split.
Yeah, well, the thing is that if you just focus on deprogramming your brain, well, that's just going to be a never-ending fucking process, okay? But if you learn how to center, oh man, you just cut through all the shit, because then you realise that you're working from your soul first, that's driving the wheel of your intellect, being your brain in the first place. And the more you get into centering and just doing without too much thinking being the alien getting in the way, it's like having the annoying fucking pedophile commentator in the fucking commentary box, commentating the game of sport, when it's like, listen, dude, I don't need you to tell me what I'm already seeing and experiencing firsthand. Sure. That's what the brain is in thinking. And if you're stuck in fear in your brain, cut off from your soul center, well, that's exactly where these reptoids want you to be. So you're so controllable. And if you're operating,
I was talking to a friend in
all this stuff so much quicker. Oh,
yeah. Well, I was talking to a friend in Bali the other day, and I said to her, you've got this situation in which all of the contemporary culture has been programmed to maintain this split between the head and body. And she said, yeah, of course, everybody is in that condition. Everybody who considers themselves a mature adult within the pervachy programming of the modern world is basically in this
absolutely, because if you're adjusted to a fucking profoundly sick society, well, that's not fucking normal. It just means that you've basically folded in from a young age to basically conforming and not making any waves and just following fucking orders and authority, regardless of whether it's fucking true or not. And you're not basically using your human soul to question things, which is real fucking science. Not this paradigm religion fucking science, but this is real science, and that's questioning. And we're at a time in the world now where the governments are just being fucking blatant criminals and literally making and interpreting their own fucking, they're breaking their own laws and everything in the first place. They're telling lies, and they're pretty much going, we don't even give a fuck anymore. So
yeah, and I think it's important to point out that criminal definition applies to war crimes as well, because all of the wars that have been conducted for the benefit of Greater Israel this century in the Middle East have essentially been illegal wars.
Oh yeah, it's total illegal wars, and the whole setup of the UN, it's just another fucking elite created subcommittee to sort of placate the people and make it look like they seem to be doing something when they're actually doing nothing at all. And Israel has been guilty of so many fucking war crimes, it's ridiculous. And the UN are basically toothless to do anything about it. And every now and then they basically condemn them in the public thing, and then people go, oh, right, okay, it's been validated. But did they do anything about it? No.
Yeah, and I think that the UN has been connected to Israel and the Zionists as well as the Vatican. So it's all the usual. It's all the usual stuff.
You know, the Rothschilds basically run it all with the money system, but then the Rockefellers actually run a lot of it through the trilateral.
And you were saying that the Rockefellers are actually one of these 13 papal bloodlines, which is the Illuminati behind the Illuminati, so to speak.
Well, they're the actual connection between the papal bloodlines and the 13 European sort
and the Anglo-American.
Yeah, they're the connector between the papal.
Ah, yeah, okay, I see.
And not many people realise this actually.
And they are originally the Piso family. Was it the Borgia?
Something like that. I did work it all out actually, because the Rockefellers were involved with that early Rome sort of situation. I know that much, and the Yahudi sort of, you know, exiled Jews from that situation. But it seems to me that whoever these Rothschilds and Rockefellers are, they've moved through a few different skin suits through the ages, because they do have this technology.
Sure.
Because I'll just say straight up, in Atlantean times, and this is what Dragon taught me, and he learnt this all through DARPA, Project Pegasus and Montauk, that basically in Atlantean times they had genetic technology that literally on a genetic level they could do cosmetic surgery without doing any surgery or anything like that. That's how advanced the tech was. So these elites, the top elites, have held these genetic secrets and how to literally change their skin colours from light to dark and dark to light again and all the rest of it. And they've done it as they've basically fucked their way through all these different races. Like the Dracos themselves will piggyback these races as they're using them, and then once they've used them and they're on to the next race to do the next sort of distortion, then they trash the ones they've just used. It's like how they've basically hijacked, you know, basically most of the white races, okay, and used the white race to cause all the fucking trouble, because the Khazarians are essentially white and fucked into the Magyars anyway, and they're pretty a lot of fuckers before that happened. And yeah, literally what they looked like when they first sort of came here from sort of Tiamat. But I'll get into another sort of thing, because they're meant to be a Magyar tribe too, but it just doesn't make sense why a Magyar tribe would go against another Magyar tribe. It just makes no.
Well, I mean, within Khazaria, the original Khazars are Turanian Magyar descendants. I get the impression that the Ashkenazi are Arabs who've come into Khazaria and mixed with the Turanians. That's the simple explanation. One of the things that I just noticed
Well, I have to correct.
In Swerdlow, that he's actually said that I think that they did a survey from one of the Italian universities of a transect of European genetics from France to Sweden, and I think 80% of those Western Europeans, so this is not even Eastern Europeans, 80% had some amount of Khazar genetics. No, I've just found the reference. It was from Spain to Finland, so an even larger transect, and the other 20% were traced to Egypt, which was also Sumerian, and that means 0% are really European. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but
well, I know what you're saying, because essentially these Khazars have fucked their way through every race, yeah. And then they've had genetic projects on the side, secret genetic projects, as well as their technology is advanced. And
if you figure in their role in the or not even their role, but their actual creation of communism in the USSR and China, they're actually responsible for genociding, upwards of 150 million Tartarian people.
Yeah.
So they're not only sort of taking the Khazar or Caspian, as in the Caspian Sea, identity, but they've not in the 8th century and onwards, but they've also continued wiping out the Tatars into the 20th century, and now with the Uyghur genocide into the 21st century as well.
Yep, and I'll just sort of pick you up on the Ashkenazi thing, because Bedini says this in his work, and Attila basically, Flink told me this as well, that the original Ashkenazis were a Turanian Magyar tribe that basically got taken over.
That's what I said,
yeah.
I mean, if you look at a lot of the surnames of the Ashkenazi, for example, the Kagan family, which were directly involved in the Mossad operation to knock down the World Trade Center in 9/11, 2001. Kagan, for example, is a straight up Turanian name for a king. So they've obviously ripped that whole thing off and made sure that they finish off the remaining Tatars whose identity that they have taken. Obviously, not Ashkenazi as well is related to the word Nazi German, as in Ashka Nazi. And if you do the digging on that and how they actually created the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler as a Tavistock agent of the Rothschild family, and who was himself sired by a Rothschild man, and one of the maidservants of the Rothschild household that he was born into, through the Bratwurst Glockel, which was obviously essentially a gay bar. You see the same modus operandi of these Khazars or Ashkenazi in terms of creating controlled opposition false fronts through minorities such as pedophiles and homosexuals, which is exactly what the German Nazi Party or German Ashkenazi Party, who were also connected to the Jesuits, all the usual suspects, all over again. And that's the methodology that they've always used and continue to do.
Yep.
Anyway, so the 7 types of reptoids that Swerdlow has mentioned in these books, you corroborate, you agree with him that there are 7 types. We could call them species or maybe subspecies, because if they're hybridizing between the two, that's technically a subspecies. Well, actually technically it depends on whether the progeny is fertile itself. If the progeny or the hybrid progeny is fertile and can go on to reproduce, then that's technically then the two parents are subspecies. Whereas if the progeny is infertile, like a mule, which is the progeny of a donkey and a horse, then the two parents are different species. But whatever kind of category we see this in, you certainly agree that there are 7 types.
Yes, I agree that there are 7 core main Draco tiered hierarchy types, okay, which basically starts with the Shems, and the lower types are actually the Hathors, and the Hathors have a little bit of sort of human sort of aspect in them, like I was mentioning the Cro-Magnon sort of aspect. I'm pretty sure that's the main sort of human part of that. But I'm sure there's probably other types are thrown in the mix as well. And the thing is that after that, you get a whole heap of Draco sort of reptoid hybrids, okay, of which we get the sort of the mantoids and things like that that are generally part of the Draco Hathor types. And in the past, in history, we've never had much problem with healing the actual Hathor types because they get sick of being trampled on by the upper sort of Dracos, and they generally kill off their own after they used them anyway, and they treat them all like shit. And basically speaking,
Hathor is an Egyptian word, is that correct?
Well, I basically worked out that Shem and Hathor, because like they rip off all their names off us in the first place, right? I reckon that basically they're really old Magyar names for actually female and male. The Hathor being the female.
Yeah, Hathor was an Egyptian cow goddess.
Okay, and the thing is that what's interesting in Magyar dialect, H, T, and M are all interchangeable, okay, in consonants. So if you look at Hathor, you see the origins of mother as well, if you change the H. Okay.
Well, yeah, it was a cow mother, a mother goddess which had a cow head or cow horns. And so you could easily see how those 2 horns, because the horns represent the division or the devil again, and the
they perverted
number
it.
2.
Again, they perverted it because originally the Magyars could actually read the stars and the constellation, and every part of the bull represented a different aspect of that creation, what's going on. And they've just taken
I get it, because that means that it's related to Nuit, which is where we get the word night from. At this time, before they inverted the genders as part of this reverse polarization process in Greece, out of Crete and the river Gallus, and they inverted the old Egyptian symbolism and made the sky male and the earth female, Gaia, whereas originally the earth, the limit, was this Kaaba or Geb, which they then feminized as Gaia, and the sky to the Egyptians was originally female, Nuit. So,
and it's funny, I just came across recently a Magyar Jeb that's got a totally different meaning as well that I hadn't come across. And I've got to look it up again. It's something that I've just come across. And
well, I've got a picture here of the
But they turned it into female Satan, like as you said,
Yeah, the female limit or the Satan, because the physical world is what limits us, whereas the sky is immaterial. It's akashic or etheric, and it was considered originally female because it is yielding or immaterial or soft. You see the meanings playing out there, and is also perhaps the cosmic womb. And you get exactly the same thing in the Chinese. This is the same thing as the Chinese. The yin or female is the immaterial world, and the yang or male is the physical world. And as we know, the original Chinese were also a branch of the Magi.
Okay, you're talking about the Huns, not the actual sort of the ring-ins,
Well, the Chinese were originally the Chia, the Chia were a branch of the Magi, or the Huns, or may have even been before the Huns, because this goes back more than 5,000 years. I mean, in their
well, it's interesting because Attila Flink said that unlike Western history, that's basically screwed the Hungarians, and the Vatican basically turned them into a 1,000-year-old race. Okay.
Yeah.
Attila said, at least with the Chinese, you know, we've got a 5,000-year history with them, even with their false history.
Exactly.
And they used to call the Magyars Shomyadi.
Well, Xia or Xiongnu. Xiongnu was the later empires, and actually the most famous king of the Xiongnu is called Mete Khan. And so Mete, it means he was a Mede or a Magyar, and he was, and the first language to go extinct in the area, presumably under Jesuit machinations involving the Romanovs, who were doing the first wipeouts in Siberia and Mongolia before the more comprehensive total takedown of the Bolsheviks and the Soviets, was called Mator. So, and obviously we know that Magyar has 5 runes, so sometimes they spell it with 5 letters. So it's called Mator Motor. And one of the things that I worked out is that it's impossible to get hold of materials on this language. So there's obviously a cover-up going on there. But yeah, he's called Mete Khan, the king of the Huns in Mongolia and China, up to the Great Wall of China, I think. And Mete is obviously Magyar or Mede, and Magyar is Mede or Magyar means obviously a Persian. And I think that before the Hun thing, what we're essentially looking at is the original extent of the Persians, or who are the same as the Magyar, and the Persh is meaning fish. And I've actually told you that there's the province of the Chachapoyas in Peru actually still has the Persian, or still has the Iranian, Hungarian, and Tajik flag to this day, and they are red-haired people in that province. So the historical extent of the Persians or the Medes is obviously much larger than we've been told in the mainstream.
Yeah. And also the fact that the Medes were actually called Medjays in Egypt, okay? And those Medjays in Egypt, it basically, that actually come from Attila Flink's sort of work. He basically said they basically got flushed out of Carthage first by the Romans, who'd basically infected the city with cholera and killed 160,000 people in 3 months.
Wow.
And they basically then went to Egypt, and he reckoned they got chased out of Egypt by Arabs. And I got another hung up to the Caucasus and stuff like that. But I've got another Hungarian researcher I'm talking to at the moment who's told me the exact sort of Egyptian pharaoh. It was, what was it? So something the third or something. It was in the time of him that basically the Medjays got chased out, and the Medjays were actually like the ones that really looked after everything. They had big responsibilities and stuff like that, and so as usual they had to get rid of them before the pervachy could take over the whole pharaonic sort of dynasty sort of thing. And after that, basically, look, it seemed like every race under the sun had their time being pharaoh of Egypt, you know, sort of ending up in the sort of Greeks at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. You've mentioned words like Hathor. So what I noticed,
getting me back on track.
yeah. I've actually got a picture of the Ogdoad, which includes Geb and Nuit, I think. At the time, this is a kind of mural. At the time of Hathor rule in Egypt, and it's the Ogdoad is obviously Octoad, So it means the 8 gods, which I think include Geb and Nuit, who we discussed, and the other gods of Egypt, you know, Horus and Set and Anubis and whatnot. And half of them have the heads of snakes, and the other half have the heads of lizards. So there's definitely something going on in terms of the reptilian imagery being connected to this word Hathor in Egypt.
Oh yeah, because they basically replaced they got rid of all the original Magyar Egyptian stuff, just like they have in every culture in the world. Okay, that seems to kick it all off, and then everyone else under the sun, you know, has a go. And basically speaking, they turned all the Egyptian stuff. It's why I remember in the 90s looking at all the Egyptian stuff, and I worked out back then that there was even a lot of the Bible stuff that had been identity hijacked from the Egyptian history as well, not only Sumerian history, but Egyptian history, UK history, you fucking name it, okay? It's all Magyar history that basically gets taken over by the whole Jewish thing, and then Judeo-Christian thing that was a controlled opposition that was, you know, set up to be a controlled opposition of Judaism. And the Satanists are using the whole Judaism thing as a matador's cape against the people to basically further their agenda, okay? And
it makes perfect sense. I mean, it makes perfect sense that the Judaic thing and the Christian thing are natural enemies. And so if we follow the modus operandi of divide and conquer and creating enemies for all the different factions to fight each other, which was then, of course, later done with Islam as well.
That was another controlled opposition after Christianity, absolutely. And
and actually they wiped out. The Vatican created the Arab version of Islam, and they actually wiped out all the original Christians in the Levant and Egypt with this Arab Islam. So,
it's funny how they created Islam. What, officially in the 6th century, was it, or 7th century?
The 7th.
Okay, isn't that interesting? That's just after the time that the Vatican had like a radical militant sort of African Moorish guard, okay?
Right.
And isn't it funny how once they get rid of that sort of Moorish sort of guard, now the roots of the whole Islam thing before it was Islam is pretty much the Moorish sciences, which basically ends up connecting back to the Magyar as well. There's a branch over to there. But the thing is that the Kabbalah was actually created by a really evil black king. Just listen to Franco Collins' stuff on that. And basically this guy spent all his fortune and everything developing the whole Kabbalah system that when he died and his son took over, his son found it so abhorrently sort of evil that he just didn't want to have part of it. And so this original sort of black king sort of Kabbalah sort of creation got basically hijacked further down the line by the Rosicrucians, with the Khazars jerking the chain there, that was supposed to be basically mining all the information for the righteous Moors. I'm not talking about the radicalized militant ones, but the righteous ones. They conned them over, and then they released all the Moorish sort of information that's also partial Magyar as well, through all the works of Shakespeare, which is a Rosicrucian production, as you know, through the spear shaker, you know, what's his name, Francis Bacon, okay? And then there's another arca after that, which is Christian Rosenkreutz of the Rosicrucian Society. So, and then when you look at a rose, well, that's a hybrid fucking plant, for fuck's sake. And rosebud, cimblery, and the heinous and all the rest of it, well, yeah, we don't need to go much further on that. And so, so basically speaking, the actual Kabbalah itself wasn't even devised by the Khazars. They just took the ball and ran with it again, you know.
Well, isn't the real tribe of Judah a Hamitic or Kemetic tribe, which was one of these North Africa, which is to say these North African peoples who are part Black African and part Atlantic origin people.
Yeah. Well, I'll just finish off the point in what I was saying. So isn't it interesting, at the very time they get rid of the original Vatican sort of African Moorish guard that was really militant, and yeah, they were the literally hired mercenaries for the Vatican. Well, when they basically got rid of them, isn't it interesting? It seems to be a similar time around when Islam was actually created in order to create that control.
And the Moors were Islamists.
Okay,
maybe one fraction of
this works with my theory that I reckon it was around the 6th century they added about 1,000 years to the timeline. Okay, because basically when the Khazars, the Swiss Khazars, took over the Vatican Guard, okay, well, the big sort of planning and takeover for this last part of the New World Order sort of thing from the 16th century happened in that Renaissance sort of period. And that's when things really started to get moving. And literally, they don't have a clear sort of thing as to when the actual Swiss actually took it over. Now, the Swiss formed Switzerland officially in 1291 after they basically created all the Crusade distraction wars between the Christians and the Muslims while they went back to Egypt to basically dig up all their gold and their loot and move it all up to the, you know, the mountain caves in Switzerland and kick off Switzerland there. Now, they say that's in 1291, but it's like there's just so much inconsistent timeline activity in all the lies and history that they tell that it seems to me through a 1541 publication that basically sourced a 2nd century AD Ptolemy map, okay, of the UK and sort of like the coast of Europe, so to speak, like France, Germany, Spain, and all that sort of thing. Now, it's a map that's in Latin, but literally right in the middle of Germania Superior and Germania Inferior is literally this place called Nemeti, okay? Now, Nemeti is actually, or Nemet is the exclusive Hungarian or Magyar word for a German in no other language, okay? And when you have an
obviously you've got the word Numidia, for North Africa, which we know was a place that the Vandals and the Goths conquered their way through and kind of trashed the whole place.
Yeah, okay. But just on this point, this is very, very significant in the missing sort of 1,000 years, which they put in there to literally make the time of Christ seem much further back than it really is. That's what it's really getting at here, okay?
Yeah, because really they're the people of the Antichrist. They're the Sadducees or Satanists, the people who killed Christ. So they're actually trying to bury the entire
topic. So this is
topic.
interesting. Literally in Romanized lettering, okay, because it was around the time of Augustus that they introduced the Latin language. And what they did was they reversed Etruscan, which is a dialect of Magyar language, which is identical to Welsh, Cymric.
And Italian dialect.
Sorry?
Croatian, I think it was, well, Etruscan in Kolbren letters was found in both Italy and also Croatia.
And also Turkey, Pelasgian in the Asian Minor.
Yes, absolutely.
Aegean sort of area as well. And so
I think it's interesting that you say that the Moors were so heavily involved in the reset, you know, adding 1,000 years and erasing history, making Christ seem further away.
Well, the Dracos just used the black races the same as the white races, you know, and once, you know.
But I don't think the Moors are the black race. I think that they're a mixed people, a Mediterranean
absolutely.
type of people.
But what I'm saying is that they've used both races and all hybrids in between to do all their dirty work, and they just go from one to the other, and then they kill off one as soon as they've achieved one sort of aspect of the strategy.
Well, the maps and the captains who were said to inform Columbus about the location of America were said to be Moorish, and it was said that Moors gave Columbus the information to find the Americas. Or I think, wasn't it somewhere like Haiti or Puerto Rico that he went to? And the translators that he took with him were actually said to be Hebrew, Hindi, and Aramaic or something. So he didn't actually take. He didn't take Hindi, is the point. Because if he'd really thought that he was going to India, which is the cover story, then obviously he would have taken Hindi translators, but he didn't. He took Aramaic, Arabic, and Hebrew translators because those were the languages he was expecting to encounter once he reached the Americas.
White Europeans also had Moors as their sort of their secret little. You see in a lot of the old paintings and stuff like that that there's a Moor in the back.
Absolutely, yeah, I've seen them all because my father, as you know, is an antiquarian, so I've seen a lot of old paintings and the Moors.
Yeah, and those
in fact, yeah,
were basically like giving intellectual advice on many different subjects. And so
actually I had an ancestor who was a painter who actually painted North African material. He was called P.L. Obenden or something like that, and he actually painted North African subjects in North Africa, in places like Algeria. And some of the subjects that I used to see in these paintings, because I had them in the family, were they seemed to be both Moorish. None of them were like completely black Africans. Some of them were darker, but there were also sort of Turkic, Khazarian people with very large noses in them. So they were obviously involved as well. And obviously the other topic to mention is that the North African Moors were the originators of slavery. So in terms of being, the fathers of Euro-colonialism, which had slavery as such a central component, it obviously traces back to them.
Well, it's interesting how the Jesuits had a plan to basically whitewash all the black folk out of Europe, and then they basically got rid of all the whites out of America.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it's like very helpful to use the word black in particular because it implies completely sub-Saharan black Africans.
I shouldn't say black, but I should just say darker skinned folk, Yeah,
let's just say mixed, like the word mulatto obviously has its origin in the word Moor.
Well, this is the thing, regardless of whether they're sort of like fully sort of black dark or sort of lighter from there, it's like they're just using the light skin and the dark skin as a polarization sort of exercise.
As a way to do this divide and conquer thing. Yeah, I think that's very, very accurate.
And it's like how they took Patagonian tribes out of South America that ended up all of a sudden, all these, Dutch that are basically short people, all of a sudden got giants, they forged ID for all these
absolutely, people. Yeah.
And they made them look like that they were always European in the first place. And they did the same with some Magyars in Africa that they basically either killed off or then just basically threw somewhere else in fucking Europe as well.
Actually, I've got a contact who knows a lot about that, and he actually knows the names of all of the giants and the Moors within Dutch history. He's this half Moluccan, half Dutch man who lives in Amsterdam called Christopher, and you should talk to him because he would have a lot of information to share with you about this topic.
Yeah, and our sort of Bengali friend is very, very knowledgeable on all of this as well. So yeah,
absolutely.
The Jesuits have literally, or the Dracos, the Jesuits sort of managing the Vatican in this sort of way into basically turning the world into different sort of polarized sort of slave farms.
Yeah, and play them all off against each other. Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. And obviously, the Vatican Hill is a place of a priesthood called the Galli, and the river Gallus is actually in Crete. So it goes back to this Minotaur, Baal, Moloch, labyrinth, human sacrifice, torture, terror thing that came from that came from the Persian pervachy and the Babylonian pervachy after they got their boy Cyrus to take over Persia.
Okay, I just want to quickly move back to this 2nd century AD sort of Ptolemy map and Nemeti, why this is so important, is that, okay, this was released in a 1541 sort of book, okay, a 2nd century AD map, right? Now,
Yep.
this is...
I mean, obviously 1541 and the 2nd century AD are not the same. So you're saying there was a 2nd century map in a 1541 book?
Yes. And that 2nd century map was a Ptolemy map, and it was all written in Latin, okay? It was the time when England was called Albion by the Romans.
Yep.
And basically speaking, the whole map is in Latin, except there's just this one crumb mistake that's spilt on the table, okay? And that's this Nemeti. And it's like, hold it, what is a Hungarian Romanized letter word doing on a Latin map from the 2nd century fucking AD? Now, let's look at officially, when did the Vatican, okay, Romanize the Hungarian language, turn it from Magyar runic script into the Romanized lettering that it is now?
I would guess 1000 AD. Time of
Exactly.
King
So that's 800 years at least out of place. Okay.
Yeah.
So
sure.
this is highlighting my point that I reckon that the 16th century was actually really the 6th century, and they just basically chucked in 1,000 years. Now, this has been my theory for a few years, and slowly but surely more crumbs are gathering to support this, let alone the work of Velikovsky and Anatoly Fomenko, who have also said this in their own way, in the sense of Velikovsky sort of pointing out, hold it, they've got literally in history Ramses II and King Nebuchadnezzar, who was a black African king, okay? He might have been the one who actually created the Kabbalah. I'm not sure. I've got to find that out off Franco Collins, but that's who I suspect. Now, they've got them as being 800 years apart, but really they existed at the same time in history.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what Velikovsky proved. And I've got all of Fomenko's books, and I haven't been through most of it yet, but I've basically heard the main sort of crux details from a few other people that have. And he's basically gone questioning things in his own way too, and going, hold it, none of this makes fucking sense. So I reckon...
Well, I mean, Fomenko is a Russian, so I think that his material heavily revolves around Tartaria.
Yeah.
The research around the eastern nations and the way that was all covered up as well. So I mean that would put the Mongol Empire in the 2nd century. So that would be before. So that would potentially put it before the Attila stuff. So it's all very, very confusing, really. I mean, one of the things about the Mongols I've actually found in Swerdlow this morning is that he said that the Mongols were openly bisexual. I don't know if that's true, but there is this whole possibility of interpreting the Mongolian thing in a different way. And obviously, they did wipe out.
Well, the Khazars used the Mongols and the Huns as well. So, you know, anything's possible there.
Anything's possible. And what I found out is that there was actually a tradition in Mongolia called the Bull Mongols. And so this goes back to possibly to Alexander the Great, bringing civilization to China and creating imperial China through his descendants, who were cynics, which may explain the origin of the name, the Sinitic or Sinic civilization, and Sino as a descriptor of Chinese civilization or civilization. And of course, we know we know the real meaning of the word civilization. It means it's a place of the Cybele cult, and of course the imperial Chinese dynasties were begun through the Qin, and the Qin were before the creation of imperial China. They were the nation closest to Alexander's empire in terms of Bactria and Greco-Bactria, because of course, you know, Alexander said to be Macedonian or Magyar, but really was a Greek agent. He was an agent of this Greek Cretan Rhodesian pervachy, not Rhodesian in terms of Zimbabwe, but Rhodes in Greece next to Crete and Israel, and the whole Solomon pervachy thing that happened with 10 tribe Israel, North Israel. So yeah, I think that this bull Mongol thing is very significant, and I've only found one reference for it anyway of a young occultist man who did in Mongolia who did a video, and apparently yeah, there is a tradition of worshipping the bull god who lives in hell in Mongolia, and so that's another piece of the puzzle in terms of what the Mongols perhaps were up to, because there's so many different interpretations of Genghis Khan and the Mongols. And before that, of course, Mongolia appears to be a country of these Ukrainian or Hungarian Ukra or Uyghur people who didn't have any Chinese blood at all. Yeah. So there's the sense that Genghis Khan could well have been a Cyberline or pervachy reset himself, and been, you know, perhaps one of the first killings off of large numbers of the original Eurasian Magyar Persian descendant Tartarians.
Well, it seemed like the Magyar actually had to, when the Huns came down that way, actually had to fight them back. And I think by that stage, it was, I'm talking about in Genghis's time, sorry. So those particular, like the actual sort of like Kublai Khan and all the ones after Genghis, that sort of fell by the wayside, in the sense of, as I've been warned by a couple of other Hungarian sort of researchers and people in the know with this, not all Huns are original Magyar souls in the way that they've all been hybrided out and all the rest of it, and it's all fallen into decay. And the Huns have gone in lots of different directions, because you've got Huns left over in Korea as well that were Mazars, okay?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
why Christian religion is big in South Korea, and they're doing the pervachy, like the Swiss and the CIA and even China are basically handling sort of Northern Korea to do a number on the leftover sort of Huns in North Korea.
Do you remember Sherep, Joseph Sherep's books, the ones that he did on the origins of the Pannoni and the Magyar in Hungary in the 1930s? He said that the word Hungarian wasn't from Hungary; it was from Asia. And it was because the onagurs came into, or the Ong in Anglian German terms, came and lived next to the Magyars. But the Magyars are obviously actually the original Persians. So this is possibly before the Huns, and actually the layout of Turkey follows the layout of the Hungarian factions in China. So it's the Huns were obviously the Turanians, and the Magyar are the Medes or the Persians, which explains why Hungary has the Iranian flag.
Well, not only that, it's like before the Council of Nicaea sort of moved shit from like Judea to sort of Palestine and all the rest of the other places around it, you know, to sort of make it seem consistent with, you know, when they're doing another reset. At that stage, Persia was actually in Hungary, apparently. So they literally moved Persia from Hungary, the Carpathian Basin, okay, Parthians, okay, they moved that down to the Middle East. And apparently the elites, with all this sort of moving stuff around, what they have to do is they constantly have to dig up and rebury artifacts from one place to another to make it seem genuine, right? Yeah. And my Montauk ex-program friend confirmed this as well, like saying what a ridiculous joke it is, what they have to do to con people with this. And then what they do is that they make new planted discoveries all the fucking time to validate that something, oh, look, we found this over here, so this is where the original thing of this over here, where actually they've just moved these artifacts from fucking somewhere else. To hide the original.
Or it just could have been one massive country, or in fact, before the Pelasgian period, there were no countries. The world was not divided into kingdoms anyway. So there were little colonies of Magi everywhere, and it was all considered one country, the whole world.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Actually, you just made me realize something, as in the origin of the name Carpathian. It's Car or Gar, Parthian, isn't it?
Exactly. It's got Parthian in the word. It's right there, right in your face. Carpathian. And it's like, you look at the Parthians in so-called sort of Persian times. Well, hold it. What if the Parthians were actually in Hungary then?
Yeah, probably.
So how many times did they fucking switched Hungary and fucking Persia over in the Middle East? I don't know. It's like, and then you've got the original Sumeria in Australia that they want to fucking hide, but they let you know about the Sumeria in Mesopotamia. Okay. And it's the same how they got an Egypt in Egypt now, but there was an Egypt in England, and then there was an Egypt in fucking America as well. So it's like, oh man, it's just getting ridiculous.
And how do you see the original Levites as being Magi as well?
Well, to me, the whole sort of the current Khazarian Levites are an identity hijacking of the original Magi in the role that they play.
Because the original Levant was largely Assyrian, wasn't it? And the Assyrians were another sort of Magi country.
You've got to be careful with Syria and Assyria, because when you put an A on the front of the word, it means against. So basically, you're talking about us, those who are against, like, Sirius, essentially, you know?
Right, yeah.
And it's the same with Arcadians. And I was trying to work this one out, and I eventually did, in the sense of the Arcadians next to the Chaldeans in Mesopotamia. Well, they originally came from Sydney Harbour. They were the Gadigal people, right? And because you've got that root word Cuddy there, okay? Now, they deliberately spell it here with a G, but G in Magyar sounds more K in English. So they keep on flipping between the K and the G all the time, like with the Jesuit linguistic tampering, to make sure that people can't work out the etymology of the words here. Now, so you've got these Cadigal people here from Sydney Harbour. They were also in pre-Hellenic Greece, okay? They were in Mesopotamia. I think they made
Chile, because we have to remember that the original Hellenic Greece is Chile, and that was the origin of the American Atlant.
Well, also, you've got Greece that literally used to be next to Judea in Scotland, where the top part of Scotland was Macedonia. Now, Attila Flink for ages was telling me Alexander the Great, he was a Magyar and he fucked up, you know. And basically speaking, he was saying the Macedonian peoples were originally Magyar as well. And basically that Alexander had basically torn apart in 13 years what his father and grandfather had set up all their lifetimes in basically maintaining a good sort of society. And it makes sense when you look at that sort of map of UK, of the possible sort of allocation of where the countries were in the UK. Well, you had Judea in the sort of west of Scotland, then you had Greece on the east of Scotland, and then on the north you had Macedonia. So there it all makes sense. And then when Constantine basically moved it all down to where it all is now, well, it's a lot more fucking confusing, isn't it? But then when you look at it all up there, what Attila found, strictly through the language and research and stuff like that, by tracing it like that, this is what he found out. And it took me ages to go, okay, how do I get my head around this one? Okay, now I know. When I look at this pre-Constantine map of the UK, bang, it's all there. It all makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure...
So Alexander is really a key pervert for all sorts of reasons. You know, Alexander is having effects on spreading pervachy all the way from Europe to China. You know, literally to China because of this Qin dynasty.
The Greeks just used it, and I dare say that the pervachy did their number on the Greeks as well to basically, you know, do all of that.
Alexander was a cynic, and he said, you know, that he was a diehard cynic, and Sin is obviously the Semitic moon god,
yes,
which is itself the Kabbalistic metaphor. And if you read about Sin, you can see that it's a deception, in that they say that the moon's Sin, which is also related to X in means to cut the one, or to from the one. You know, it's all Kabbalah. It's all this Kabbalah thing, or garbling thing of the original cultures, all over again. You know, and the deception is that they say that the Venus and the Sun are the children of Sin, the moon, and obviously knowing
that sounds like, oh fucking hell.
Yeah, because we know that the moon came after. We know that the moon wasn't here 13,000 years ago. So obviously it's a deception, but it's putting the moon in the premier position in terms of ruling what's going on in this world, and that was obviously the intention of whoever put it there, which may be these reptoid hybrid people or whoever is in charge of them, maybe just fully reptilian beings warring against the ancestors of the Magi or the angels or whoever they were. And yeah, so Alexander was a cynic, and that's exactly what we call civilization in China is cynic, or you know, Sino. So to this day, so it's said to be one of the oldest civilizations, as in Cybele cult, which is part of this cynic Kabbalistic tradition, which we've traced extensively. So yeah, I definitely see Alexander as being a key pervert, and obviously he would be after Solomon, I guess. So in terms of tracing the pervachy, we can not only trace the actual national lineages in terms of where this parasitic Kabbalistic society has moved around the globe using different countries as their central country. But we can also trace the key figures, and Alexander and King Solomon and King Minos of the Minotaur, and then all of the Jesuit and then European colonial lineages, all seem to form a sort of lineage that goes back to Zoroaster.
Yeah, well, what I thought I'd add to that, the Lord of the Rings Middle Earth is actually situated in Atlantean times in the Americas, right? And we're looking at,
yes,
it's kind of
the
like
maps, clearly suggest,
it seems to be around from 10,000 BC onwards. So it's sort of like post in
It's
a way.
after the flood. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's directly after the flood.
And I basically worked out years ago, I was saying, okay, the Khazars basically crashed here from Tiamat with Hebrews, Chinese, and a few others into Arizona Canyon, okay? And it's in the Navajo Indian records, I found out at the time. And then I was looking at George Hunt Livingston's Other Flesh, Other Tongues, which basically showed a lot of clues. It's got it all in that book if you know how to look at it properly. And also, they basically needed to turn the Venus Lucifer, okay, which is a feminine thing, and it was actually Magyar, you know, and unfortunately Magyars had to deal with Latin and all that sort of crap as well. But they turned the feminine, now this is a common pervachy trick of turning the original feminine into the male, okay, transing it, okay, doing their whole sort of androgyny sort of number, training number. And basically they turned the Venus sort of feminine energy and they flipped the new morning star to be Tiamat, to basically work for the astrotheology in the Bible when they made the first Latin translation of the Bible, and they translated phosphorus from the Greek Bible into Lucifer of the Latin Bible. So this is how they sneak the Lucifer male sort of entity, and with the astrotheology in it, to basically align with the morning star being Tiamat or Maldek, okay?
Isn't Lucifer and Satan related to the sun in terms of a corruption of the original symbolism? Because Satan directly can translate into meaning the setting sun. And of course, when the sun is setting against the horizon, the sun or the soul or the solar principle is, of course, cut horizontally, which is again the Kabbalistic metaphor. And once the sun has set, or as the sun is setting, then you see the appearance above the sun of the planet Venus, which is the first star you're able to see as the sun is setting, and which is, of course, where the symbol V, which is actually, as you have yourself said, the same symbol as the letter Y, in terms of this idea of creating two from the one, which is again the Kabbalistic metaphor, and everything seems to go back to this Kabbalistic metaphor, and all of the Illuminati as well seem to use this symbol of the dawn of the new day.
Oh yeah.
In terms of the Kabbalah, in terms of their Kabbalah symbolism, and in the mind of the masses, this creates. This is a sort of trick in that when they say the dawn of the new day, they're actually saying that we are going to create. The people think that it's them saying that there's going to be a bright new day for mankind, but what they're actually saying
is once they wipe us all out and they get the place to themselves. Yeah.
yeah. But what they're actually saying is that they're talking about cutting the sun, and of course, cut originally means uncut. Another confused term concept. Originally, cut is from Keter, the same as Scythian and all of these other related words. You know, it's all the same stuff. It all goes back.
Human affinity here, you know, which
it all goes back to the concept of darkening the soul. And one of the intuitions that I've had is that this concept of cutting the soul is actually one of the preconditions to being taken over by a foreign entity, a foreign spirit, or foreign being,
right,
because
that's a very good point.
Yeah, right. Because once the energy circulation or organ wheel or keta or cut in the body is broken, then then a foreign being can enter the energy of the person. So I think that, and so the way that they've twisted the word cut almost sort of is a prerequisite or psychological preconditioning to the introduction of a foreign spirit such as a reptoid. So it's going back to the reptoid again, and to go back to Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Obviously, the Dark Lord is called Sauron, and Saur, as in dinosaur, is reptile in Greek. So there's a real story there.
Oh yeah, because what I was going to say, that after I'd worked this out years ago, and I was putting this information out in about 2015 regarding the real origins of the Khazar and stuff like that. Well, it took people by storm, but I also found this out from a guy who basically had past life memory of living on Tiamat, and he basically said, well, Tiamat basically came to its self-destruction and high technology sort of situation that basically self-imploded, okay, from Dracos playing fucking sport yet again, divide and conquer, and they basically took over.
I'll tell you something that nobody else has worked out, which is that there are actually plutonium residues in the asteroid belt. So there's evidence that nuclear bombs were involved.
Well, the US government knows that was destroyed by hydrogen bomb technology. They know that.
Yeah, okay.
They have that information.
Probably the nuclear program in the 20th century was may have been reverse engineering of ancient stuff. I mean, there's nuclear bomb residues in Harappa as well. I think it's not Harappa. It's Mohenjo-daro. Is it Pakistan or India? I mean, it was all India originally. But yeah, Mohenjo-daro has got the radioactive residues and also appears to be wiped out by a nuclear bomb.
Okay, so back to sort of Middle Earth being the Americas. So basically, when our mutual sort of research buddy here, Bengali man, he basically pointed out to me that the time period where Middle Earth was Middle America, it took me about a minute to work out, oh, that's a validation of all the work that I did years ago. It's another validation, because straight away I went, those fucking dwarves, those fucking midget fucking dwarves chasing the fucking gold, all the machinery, they're the fucking Khazars, straight up.
Could be.
No, it's not could be, it is. Because they basically crashed into Arizona Canyon around 9000 BC. It places it all in the same time period, and when they actually really came here. And they came here, they converted a moon of Tiamat that's known as Lilith, okay, or Malona, and they turned it into a spaceship, and they used this abomination technology called an Alep to basically get through here. And yeah, this sounds fucking out there, but they had this.
No, do you know why I'm laughing? Is because I hate to give it to you, but I can actually think of something that supports what you're saying in terms of the Khazars coming out of there, because the Uto-Aztecan culture does actually originally extend up to Arizona, I think. I'll check that later.
Yeah.
But these Aztecans, Uto-Aztecans, the Aztecs are obviously a human sacrifice culture, and they do have these big Khazarian noses. So it does create. I hate to give it to you on this kind of further out stuff. I hate to give it to you.
I'm a
but it is there. It is
there. Sort of things initially, and then I have to chase the details. But this is just how the centering thing works. It actually tells you what's going on. You just intuit it, and you join things so quickly, and you just see it all, and you're just struggling for language to describe it all.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm totally fucking uneducated. Like, you know, I was basically like meant to be a prodigal sort of person at school. And I only did well in the subjects that actually made sense to me, and the rest of it I just looked at. And if it didn't make practical sense to me, and I couldn't see any value in it, I just went, fuck this shit off. And so...
Yeah.
with some things I didn't become that well educated with, but I made a decision to educate myself after I left school because I didn't like what school had turned me into. And I thought, I'm going to deprogram all the fucking this to get to the essence of what is me, and then I'm going to start again from there. And that's exactly what I've done for over 30 years. But instead, I did it all by mapping the consciousness of my unconscious instinct to make my instinct conscious again, where once upon a time when we didn't have confused tongues, we never had an unconscious because everything was fucking transparent.
Yeah.
We all had the same language.
I'm just checking the location of Arizona, and it does appear to be an Uto-Aztecan language area. So there you are.
Okay, and also the elites were having a huge problem in a crater in Arizona with the black goo that basically came from the fucking crash when they crashed there. And then they had all this Lilith's egg symbolism shattering into earth, bringing their fake tree of life, replacing our tree of life. I've got that sort of thing. I'll see if I can find it here for you just to show you the symbolism. And basically, Lilith's egg shattering is all the fucking it's a combination of black goo and I'm pretty sure like moldavite, which is literally comes from like what they call Tiamat, Maldek, okay? And I'm sure it is actually connected because moldavite's not from fucking here, okay? And so there was this sort of black goo thing that came in from Tiamat as well that's caused a big fucking problem in some crater there that the elites had from almost 10 years ago. And they were basically doing their usual thing of going, shit, what do we do to fix the fucking problem? And as usual, they call in the best fucking experts, use them, and then, kick them to the curb once they got the fucking answer they need. And so this is what the elites constantly keep on doing is when they got a big problem they can't solve it out themselves, they try and find the smartest person around to fix it and then fuck them over after that.
So, I mean, in The Lord of the Rings, Sauron is obviously the first Dark Lord. There's actually a book here that you should check out. You and the Bengali should check out. Maybe I'll send him a copy as thanks for all the hard work that he's done. And it's called, I've got a copy right here. And it's called The Silmarillion. And it deals with the history before The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So it could be, and actually one of the things that Tolkien wrote and obviously one thing that we haven't mentioned for people listening or people reading the transcript of this, which will be, is that we are unconsciously or we're not mentioning the background to this topic, which was elucidated by Michael Sarian, the Irish researcher, who said that in the Tolkien's works were actually transliterations of Atlantic or Atlantean books, which were kept in the library of Oxford University, which is the oldest university in England. And so I think that's important to mention here in terms of context for anybody who's examining our information. And actually, one of the clues in the introduction to the Silmarillion that Tolkien wrote, or actually no, it was a letter that Tolkien wrote to a friend, was that the Silmarillion is in the Silmarillion he hoped that his writing could rise to the what was it exactly he said? I hope that it can reach the quality of true myth. So I think that's almost a clue, isn't it? That he was saying that he wanted it to reach to to the type of to the format or to the. I'm basically trying to avoid saying the word level because I hate the word level because it's Masonic. You know.
Yeah.
So, but I could, let's just say he hoped that he would reach the level of true myth, and maybe that was the word that he used. But I try not to use the word level because it's a word that everybody uses in all their conversations.
The word realm is probably easier.
Okay, yeah. So he wanted to enter the realm of true myth. So I think that's a clue that he was actually translating true Atlantean myths that he found in Oxford University.
Well, this is what the elites do. The elites literally put certain truths of history into myth so they can actually have a sort of a marker peg for the truth themselves.
yeah, sure, yeah, because I mean they've got to keep all this stuff alive for their own people to remember.
Yeah, because they keep on destroying their information through stupidity after they've had big major wins in the past, and they're celebrating and they think, oh, we don't need this information anymore, so we're just going to turf it. Later down the track we go, oh shit, we need that information back now.
yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. And actually Michael Sarian said that it was C.S. Lewis was doing this as well with the Narnia stuff, which takes us back to the statues and the fact that that was all that all has a real side to it as well. And actually my mother, who was in her 20s, was an estate agent. She actually sold C.S. Lewis's house. And she said it was incredibly creepy. And my mother's quite an intuitive person. She's also a Pisces like me. Her birthday's actually on St. Patrick's Day, and she said it was one of the most creepiest houses that she'd ever been to. So there was obviously something occult going on with C.S. Lewis as well.
Oh, no doubt. Well, it's like how the Jesuits also released soft disclosure through fiction, through Gulliver's Travels, and Lewis Carroll. They set this stuff up all the time through fiction. The most out there sort of history they always set up through fiction, and then the standard sort of history they put into religious and spiritual texts. It's like it's just, oh man.
Well, in Gulliver's Travels, we've obviously got the non-fallen horsemen, and horsemen is a code for Huns, and we've also got the giants as well.
Well, and then you got the Heinous, who they describe as the perfect original Magyar souls, that they were literally these beings that couldn't understand why people wouldn't want to tell the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Those were the horsemen, and horsemen is a metaphor for Huns. And the other thing in Gulliver's Travels, of course,
there's a code there in the Heinous that my mate Darren worked out, who also knew Attila Flink as well, who also got gang stalked. He basically said Heinous has got the same amount of letters as Hungarians or something like that. He worked it out. Yeah. And then I said to him, if you look closely at the word Heinous, it's actually saying who in him, a question. And then he gone, right, Hungarians.
Yeah, sure.
So this is how they take the piss and have their little sort of in-jokes.
I know that Gulliver's Travels was published 150 years before European astronomers discovered the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos.
Exactly.
And it contains the exact orbital periods of Phobos and Deimos 150 years before they were discovered by Europeans. And the orbital periods are exactly correct in Gulliver's Travels. And they knew of them, these Australian or Australasian branches of the Magi, which were then, as controlled opposition, reported in Gulliver's Travels by the Jesuits. And they knew them because they had these telescopes which were obviously much better than the Europeans had.
Yeah, they were 3-foot telescopes that were better than the fucking Hubble.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so they obviously had some kind of deeper knowledge of science than the controlled opposition version of science that we've been forced down our throats.
That basically didn't create any fucking harm for a start. And basically any technology that you make that can cause harm if it falls into the wrong hands, you do not make, because we are the fucking technology.
Yeah, sure.
Our bodies are the technology. We are energy.
Yeah, so do you see any mention of the reptoids or reptilians in Gulliver's Travels? Or the people who wrote it are the reptilians, really?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. But they probably stole it off our accounts anyway. So it's like, and then they probably did their little fucking dance all over it. And yeah. But basically speaking, getting back to the reptoids itself, once I worked out, it all just came to me. Once I worked out the whole Shem and Hathor thing, I literally triggered, like, it must have been past life memories in something, because then it all started just coming to me. I just had this deja vu. I know this. I've dealt with this before. And not only that, I started taking entities out of people. And then before too long, I worked out how to basically take down a whole Draco collective, okay? And so the whole time I'm taking sort of stuff out of people, I'm literally working out. I'm going, okay, that's a little entity that's connected to like a tall grey or a green Shem or a brown Hathor. And I'd literally trace whether these Dracos were here on Earth or on another sort of world. And I was going, my goodness, this is energy harvesting like I've never seen it. And so I just went on this rampage taking out Draco collectives using my centered energy, and I was taking notes of all the different types that were in people and stuff like that, so I could work out all the different collectives on all the different worlds, from Earth to, say, like Venus to Saturn to, and I found the most powerful Dracos were actually on Pluto.
I see.
Yeah. And so it's like, as I've heard since then, it's like the Dracos have literally they've created prison planets everywhere, prison worlds everywhere, all over the galaxy. And the thing is that what I worked out was, in Atlantean times, the Dracos started breeding hybrids of fucking everything back then, and they literally created 2,500 Draco hybrid fucking ET races then that they went and colonized other places with. So it was a big fucking nightmare in that sort of regard. Because I'll give you some examples just on the basic Earth level of their hybriding. Like, they created food for the actual the reptoid shapeshifters to basically stop making them sort of eating so many humans, just to basically have human sort of hormones to balance out their shapeshifting, because they're overloaded with reptoid genetics in them, okay? And so they decided, okay, let's create some reptoid food. We'll mix human with a wild boar. And that's what we got, the pig, okay? So the reason why the Jews and the Muslims don't eat pig because it's unclean, it's not so much because it rolls around in mud and shit and all that sort of thing. It's because it's genetically unclean. And I think that original reason got lost in sort of later sort of superstition sort of stuff.
Well, isn't it because the meat of a pig is full of parasite eggs?
Well, you've got that aspect as well, but the thing is, essentially, a pig is half human.
No, okay. Not sure about that. Anyway, I mean, I can look it up. Okay.
I'll give you another example. And to create wild boars, they mixed humans with rats, okay? And then to create the merfolk, like the mermaids and the mermen, the Dracos basically mixed humans with fucking fish. Like, we're not talking about like original sort of fish beings and stuff like that going way back in time, but we're talking about Atlantean reptoid fucking hybrids. And so,
I mean, I don't know if any of this is true, but I mean,
well, the thing is, James, as Dragon told me, what he learnt in Montauk, you know, growing up through DARPA then having Donald Rumsfeld take him personally to Project Pegasus, and then he went to Montauk, okay? So he got to find out all this stuff, and he said straight up that basically in Atlantean times they had genetic technology that they could change their whole appearance and everything genetically using technology without any nip-tuck surgery or anything like that, okay? That's how advanced.
Well, I think it's a theme that you see all over the alternative literatures, that the Atlanteans were doing genetic engineering, and this story could have, just to be slightly skeptic,
Sure.
this story could have its origin in the depiction of things like the Egyptian gods, where they had humans with animal heads, but that may have a perfectly down to earth anthropological reason, but it may not. I mean, I don't think it's
at all. You could be talking about humans, okay, and with the animal heads on them, you could say that that's their soul totems, aspect.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it's some kind of depiction of some kind of characteristic that the individual had.
No, but the thing is that I've seen these Dracos up close in person, and they literally are an abomination of creation in the sense
So
of
what kind of
genetic.
appearances do we see beyond these three that you've described as tall greys, Shems, and Hathors, which are, I think, green and brown, according to your interpretation.
Okay, with the Hathors, you get brown Hathors, yellow Hathors, and blue Hathors as your main types. Okay. Africans got created in Atlantean times by mixing blue and brown Hathors together. Okay. And with the Shems, you got green Shems, okay, which is your standard sort of green sort of Draco sort of thing. And there's a lot of different sort of variations on that as well, because that's what Dracos keep on doing. They keep on hybriding all the time, just like they make computer programs to say that the latest sort of hybrid sort of thing is the best thing, where really it's actually a devolution. It's like they're making it more complex, and basically the way that their creation mechanics work is all destructive. And literally what they're doing is they're hybriding things out so much. And even when they hybrid, they hybrid with like industrial sort of chemicals and textiles and things like that are just fucking poison and shit like that. And it's ridiculous. And so you've got those basic Draco types, but then you've got hybrids that happen further from there that basically fill out most of the ET sort of fucking variety of the new age right now. And then you've got Dracos, which I call pigs with lipstick, pretending to be the good sort of ETs and shit like that, okay, that are guardian angels that are literally guarding their piece of meat so no one else gets them, and they'll, be nice to you and basically show you heaps of fucking psychic tricks and all that sort of thing to hook you in. So they're basically got you all to themselves to fucking harvest the whole fucking time. Okay? And
I think that this is a good important point.
Then you've got all these fake Pleiadians that are Draco pigs with lipstick as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was my impression looking at the Swerdlow material this morning, was that he there's no evolutionary biology in it, and he traces everything to off-world, to other constellations. I mean, for instance, even the word Draco or Draco, is a constellation which is called the Dragon, because the dragon was associated with magnetism, and the Draco constellation is, I believe, in the at the North Pole. So you see, there is actually an alternative explanation for the word Draco, and I think.
Well, I think that
is
I know exactly what it is. Okay, it's the fact that there were original reptilian dragon races, okay, and the Dracos have identity hijacked them as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the sense of the original reptilian races here from Ugar, Australia, that's a completely different story. And they had a relationship with the Magyars too. And it gets into that whole sort of original sort of fish being sort of story and the fallout from the fish beings, from the ones that became endocrine disrupted and went to Aldebaran and turned themselves into cat and dog mutants that then later went to make the reptilians. And the reptilians came back first because they wanted to heal. But the cat and dog mutants used this as a sort of a thing that, like, okay, once we finish gobbling up the rest of the omniverse, we'll come back here and cause mayhem and destruction and eat everything down here after the Magyars have basically done all this healing on the reptilians and we'll fucking destroy it again from there. So there's a whole different fucking story that no one knows about that, where the Dracos have literally totally hijacked all these original reptilians.
Yeah. So look, the Alpha Draconis was the northern pole star.
So indeed, what you're saying is correct.
3,942 BC, when it moved farther north than Theta Bootis. So the name Draco for this constellation may be because dragon. The dragon is associated with magnetism and the North Pole. So, do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's an entirely alternative explanation.
That's totally valid. And the Draco have basically gone and demonized it and basically given it all to themselves.
Well, that you see, Steve, this was why I was trying to. That's why I was making this document originally, because I wanted to put the alternative explanations out there in terms of an earthly origin from the pterosaurs of these reptoids, because I just see all of this kind of information as being, you know, a mixture of truth and programming. And I mean, even Sverdlov could contain programming because he was a Montauk insider, you know. So I wanted to give my own scientific analysis.
But this is the thing about the Montauk insiders that I've noticed with every single one that I've known, and in particular Dragon as well, who I got to know the best, okay, is that they were told about almost everything, okay, about true knowledge, but then they were told in a more sort of ET, sort of out there sort of form, and nothing's from here sort of thing, okay? But the one key thing was none of them were told anything about the Magyars. And there was only one guy, I reckon, that knew about the Magyars a lot, and that was Preston Nichols, and I was going to call him in 2018, and literally when I thought about calling him and doing it, he literally died.
Wow. So he just how did he die?
I'm not sure what the circumstances were with his death, but yeah, I just literally found out. I was talking to Montauk ex-programmer sort of contact, and he was encouraging that too. He says, I reckon you should have a talk to Preston Nichols and basically hit him up with Magyar questions, and I think you're going to find out some interesting answers. So ex-Montauk programmer seemed to have he seemed to already know about this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so again we're being contained.
Yes, we're being contained. And Dragon was one of the smartest people I've ever fucking met, in the sense of he was their best fucking super soldier, from intuitive and psychic realms to literally being a hardcore physical man. And he was a computer nerd, and he was a shaman as well. So he literally was like a Merlin. He literally had all these skill sets down that were just fucking incredible. Plus,
and you've said that he may actually be still alive.
He is still alive. I just know look, he's told me I'm a prepper, and basically I know the shit's going to hit the fan. It was like in that document I sent to you. He literally puts in it 10 years ago. He said
shit's already hit the fan, man. I mean, COVID is the shit.
Well, he said
2021 is the fan, you know.
He said in 2010, I think it was, on that document, that he said specifically 2020 is the year it's all going to start to go to shit. And he was spot on.
Yeah, he was. He was.
He was
COVID.
absolutely spot on. And he said to me, I'm a prepper. I'm basically, so he's basically somewhere in the countryside. He's basically dug himself in and he knows what's ahead because he was also there. This is very important. I say this now. He was made to be at this meeting of the top 3 ET, I'll just call them ETs for now. They're probably reptoids that's actually in control of planet Earth. And he called it the meeting of 1976 that he was made to be present at. And he told me, I still don't know why they made me to be present at this meeting, okay? And he said at this meeting, the top ones were literally like an old grandfather man like you see in the grandfather in the sky sort of fake god sort of thing, okay? He said there was a dude like that there. There was a blue aquatic and also a blue aquatic being. And then he also said there was some sort of queen that the way he described it sounded like a Draco sort of queen character. And then he said that there was a Magyar there, but it's not talking about the Magyar, but we're talking about a Satanistic sort of Magi sort of secret society that Rockefellers are involved with. That's all about
like Leviticus.
Yeah, they got their own sort of demonized Magi order, and one of them were at the meeting as well.
Is that the same as the Levites?
I dare say, most likely, okay? And what he basically said, the result of that meeting was basically the decision to basically trash Earth and the whole New World Order thing and everything like that was a done deal right there and then at 76. And he said, I've been a prepper ever fucking since.
Wow. So
yeah.
that's what's beginning with COVID.
Yep.
Yeah,
and the COVID thing, well, the whole sort of eugenics sort of kill them off with a virus sort of thing has been the subject of so many films and miniseries and things like that. The best one I've seen is Utopia from 2013. And there's 2 seasons of it. And it literally spells it all out. Like literally how through all the vaccines and stuff, they're literally targeting certain racial types first. And depending on which vaccine they're actually using, they're different targets.
yeah, sure. There was a couple of other ones as well, 12 Monkeys, and there's another one which, strangely enough, had the Magyar cross on it, the 2-armed cross. I'll look it up and I'll give it to you later.
Yeah.
Finally, to wrap everything up on all of these conversations, we want to look at the experiences of these exorcisms that you did in 2015, and we want to get some information about the Draco phenomenon and beings which you experienced during those treatments with people.
Okay. Well, in 2014, there was one stage, one night, I literally got attacked by 3 senior Dracos. And they literally did a big fucking twist on my crown, on my body. And they basically did it from the etheric. See, the Dracos and the Greys in particular know how to fuck with you on your etheric astral levels to then further manifest into your physical. So basically, a normal sort of medical sort of doctor doesn't have a fucking clue of tracing where the fuck this shit is coming from, okay? And they just think it's some psychiatric idiot with a fucking head problem and complaining about sort of body conditions that are not sort of existent, but they're there. And the thing is that, as we know, the doctors are just fucking pharmaceutically trained drug dealers, for the most part. There's not many doctors that
absolutely
sort of beyond it. And so, and the fact is that they can't even detect toxicity properly because of the mycoplasma situation, in the sense that they don't have a fucking test that can really test for that properly. So it gets under the radar as sort of all of these neurosystemic degenerative diseases that are basically autoimmune diseases that they can't cure, and hence they basically start all these scams for the cure of cancer and cure of this, cure of Parkinson's, cure of fucking whatever fucking disease they basically make up that they can make money from. And really, at the end of the day, mycoplasma is the linking pathogen between all neurosystemic degenerative diseases. And this was put together by a retired school teacher.
Well, they've now discovered that Alzheimer's is actually gingivitis. So that's not mycoplasma. That's a bacteria.
But the aluminium poisoning doesn't help either.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that the aluminium is very important because I suppose aluminium is the previous generation of making the body more conductive so that it can be used as an EMF antenna, so that people become more susceptible to psychotronics. Whereas now we're looking at graphene as replacing aluminium, perhaps because it's less toxic, so that they can actually boost the conductivity and electrical conductivity of the body higher without so much toxic effects. I don't know exactly, but
actually about the graphene oxide nanoparticulate, it's actually what is causing in the face masks all the COVID fucking symptoms in people's fucking lungs. For fuck's sake.
Right.
All the flu symptoms. It's ingeniously fucking evil, you know? And it's like and this can be pointed out with real fucking science, and yet these governments with all their faux pas fucking science and shit like that, they're just lying through their fucking ass. Like, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and it's like they've just dumbed down the world so much that most people, all they're thinking about is, oh, I want to go on holiday. I want to go to work. I want to do all the things that I used to do. So they won't do any research, just get jabbed, and that's the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
It's just tragic. And it's like here in Australia, just the other day, I was just looking at this video of all of these people out west on a really fucking cold night are waiting over 2 hours in a fucking line in the freezing cold, all to get vaccinated. It's not even a fucking vaccine. It doesn't even qualify as a vaccine.
No.
It's literally gene editing. But anyway, it's like we know the science. We know what's going on. We know that there's no such thing as sort of airborne viral pathogens. It doesn't fucking exist, okay, in that sort of basic sense. That cell exosomes are literally caused by toxicity into the fucking body. It's about the terrain theory, okay? So
well, yeah, I mean, this is all debatable from a virological point of view, but I think the important thing is to point out that we don't need that. We don't need that to explain
the medicine. You know that catching a cold, airborne, it doesn't happen like that. You know, the reason why people catch colds and stuff like that is because they're having a detox, okay, between weather sort of stuff, okay, and then quite often there's this parasympathetic sort of thing when people are around each other that are going through that sort of shedding toxicity sort of process in the body. They basically, you know,
it's highly debatable.
Well,
let's go back to your experiences in 2015.
This allopathic medicine is a crock of fucking shit, full stop.
Oh, I'm not saying that's not true. I agree with that. That's definitely true. But I mean,
medicine before that didn't have this fucking viral sort of thing where they basically go, oh, let's just basically give some symptom alleviation to make people think they're better, but force the disease further into their fucking body to manifest and come out as something else, while the disease kills them, while we basically sort of keep them alive for a bit longer with symptom relief and make a fucking shitload of money in the first place. That's not medicine.
Sure. No, it's not.
Yeah, it's just outright. Sorry, I just get so passionate about this because it's like, to me, it's like cell exosomes are the body dealing with toxicity. It's like when you get cancer. It's like your body's got to shed toxicity and shit like that. And it's like there's a process you go through.
I think this is the thing about virology, is it's a huge topic, and there is, I mean, on the exosome thing, I mean, actually, what you may have just given is an example, is the evolutionary origin viruses. But then viruses may have evolved into something else as well, which is what we think of as normal viruses, because there is plenty of evidence of viruses being real and of how viruses work in terms of DNA. But I mean, the exosome process that you've described may well be the evolutionary origin of real viruses. You know.
Well, the thing is that even Kerry Mullis, the inventor of the PCR, okay, it's not even a test. All it is a magnification tool to get small genomic material, okay, and actually magnify it, okay. Now, when you magnify a cell exosome, you're going to have heaps of different sort of bacteria and things like that, because we do have bacteria living in us. That's how we survive, okay. And the thing is that there's good bacteria and bad bacteria, okay. And basically speaking, if you put poison into your body, okay, whether it's through, look, they've made the whole industrial textile, like furnitures, things like that, out of all of these toxic fucking textile products to basically pollute and toxify our bodies as well. Then they put all this food technology bullshit into processed food to further put toxicity in us. And then we have the chemtrails, we have all the pollution and stuff like that. So it's all about toxicity. And the thing is that the amount of times I've been to the doctor and hospitals and I've said to them specifically, I want a toxicology report, please. And they start freaking out. Because a proper toxicology report will actually tell you of what toxic processes and stuff that's been put into your fucking body, and they'll see, oh no, it's not a fucking disease. It's like you just got toxins in your fucking body that shouldn't be in your fucking body. And that's what these eugenicists have insidiously worked out doing, down to the ink on your fucking receipts that you get when you buy an item from, you know, a shop. That ink is endocrine disrupting ink.
Oh yeah, I'm aware of all these topics, and I think it's very interesting that I think that this is reflected also in EMFs and microwaves, in terms of the fact that we have such, or rather the common man and woman have such a low
resonate with all this hot energy EMF fucking shit and stuff like that. So if you're constantly cleaning your body out, say for instance with chlorine dioxide that's oxidizing all the shit out of your body, well then they can't use you as a target because you don't have all this shit in your body all the time. It's much harder for them to zap you. Okay, even though they've still worked out a way that they'll target your unique frequency with that EMF, so they don't even need a microchip to do that. All they need is just a copy, just some sort of genetic.
Yeah, and the conductors as well, the graphene and the aluminium, the electrical conductors.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, don't associate graphene with electrical conduction, but it's one of the best electrical conductors in the world. Because they think of electrical conductors as metallic. So if it's some kind of carbon, they don't make the association, and that may be another way for them to conceal what they're actually doing. But yeah, I mean, I was just saying that there is clearly a reflection of the low awareness that modern people have of their ingestion of toxic chemicals, to the very minimal awareness that they have of the toxicity of EMF.
Okay. And the thing is, just lastly, with Kerry Mullis, the inventor of the PCR, he basically said, well, basically, the more that you magnify this genomic material, okay, so you can see it bigger, you're going to get more distortions and shit like that the more that you magnify it, to the point that you can literally make any disease out of fucking anything from these cell exosomes that are not an airborne, you know, sort of viral pathogen. It's literally your body going through toxicity, and if you treat your body right with the right things in toxicity, well, you clear it up. It's that simple. But if they give you more poison to put in your body, that's, you know, I'll give you a great example, okay? I've got this shaman friend of mine that was wondering how during the Black Plague that women, when they had polluted breast milk, how the hell were they feeding their children? So he basically went back into the Black Plague times through one of his soul totems, right? And he remote viewed through the soul totem, right, to find out, okay? And what he found out was that the women were giving their children corn milk.
Okay.
Milk from corn, okay? And what you'll find in a lot of pharmaceutical products, they're actually using this milk corn as a placebo in a lot of their fucking drugs.
I see. Yeah.
He's one smart cookie, this friend of mine. And yeah, he found this out to be true. And then he started educating all these doctors and they started researching it and they're going, fuck, you're right.
Well, there's evidence that I think that the Black Death was a kind of biological warfare scenario as well.
Oh, it was. And that's why they created the CCR5 genetic, by ritualizing Magyar genes through homosexual sex rituals in really fucked up ways. So it literally gave the Khazars, the Hyksos that hijacked the original fucking Irish Scythians, a skin suit when they fucked into them that literally was immune to all of the biological weapons. And today you'll find a lot of these elites and these Khazars literally have this CCR5 genetic, and you can only get it if both of your parents have that genetic. If only one of your parents...
Oh, because it's a deletion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Have you in these sort of exorcisms that you did of people infected with Dracos?
Yes.
In 2015, did you receive any reports of the rituals that they had been in?
There was a few women that I actually found etheric implants in, and I find that etheric implants are usually put in through rituals, through my own experience of having to get rid of them, and also other people as well I observed that had been in rituals. And so when I came across sort of strangers that would call me up to say, hey, I think I may have some problems, can you check me out? In this specific sort of regarding entities and stuff. And then I remember these two women I came across and I said, well, none of you have got any entities. You're clear in that sense, but you've got these etheric implants in strange parts of your body that's rather sensitive, and I'm going to have to remove them. And I'd use the same center energy from my solar plexus to basically remove all of that stuff. And the thing is,
did you see any evidence that this woman who's just had these attacks, Cheryl Hall, the wife of Toby Hall, who's been linked in the exoteric society to the Templars? Did you see any evidence with her that she has any of these kind of ritual implants?
Because she's involved with tarot stuff, and basically the tarot was brought through by the Khazarian Magyars that basically went through Venice and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Most likely. And I don't really want to comment too much of that at the moment, okay, because it's a work in progress.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
let's go back to the
I'm not at
patients
liberty to reveal that specific information at the moment, but maybe at a later stage.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to
Just
2015.
there. Sorry?
In when you were doing these exorcisms after you worked out how to do it,
yeah,
what kind of entities did you perceive as being involved, and did you see all 7 of these different types of reptoids?
Absolutely. Yep. I basically dealt with all 7 different types, and also all the entities that were astrally, etherically, plasma connected to them, because they got a big hive sort of connection where basically the top of the royalty Dracos of each collective are literally feeding off all the lower ones, who are then basically attached to people's chakras on hosts and things like that. The thing is that these entities connect to any of your chakras except your solar plexus. Why? Because the solar plexus, that's too strong for them. They need the energy at a step down sort of electromagnetic sort of level or crystalline.
But did you see what stage did you see these entities in terms of their stage of development? Obviously, we talked before about the implantation of a sort of etheric fetus into the body, possibly the lower abdomen of people. Did you see them in adult form? Did you see them in infant form, in fetal form, as children, as older beings? What kind of condition were they in?
Okay, basically the entities are like they're like little gremlins, you know, sort of little. They can take all sorts of like different sort of forms and stuff, and animal sort of shapes and insect shapes and stuff like that that will be akin to that particular Draco sort of thing. Now, the insects beings were made by the Dracos, okay? Insectoids, they come from Dracos as well, okay? And then basically, when I came across a Draco walk-in in people, okay, that's something that a standard sort of shaman that's taught with basic third eye tools and using astral energy only, they get slam dunked by these Draco walk-ins, big time. I've heard so many stories, okay? And there's this one woman I took a walk-in out of that had been basically walking into this woman for almost 10 years. They take about 10 years to fully walk into someone, okay, at that stage. That's what I'd worked out. And this woman was not fully walked in, but basically about sort of 3/4, 4/5 of the way in, okay? And she told me, she said, so many people have tried to remove this thing from me and they all end up running away from me and saying, oh, you know, they literally get slam dunked, you know? And I said, okay. And because I was using the center energy, okay, you've got to use a little bit more sort of force and intensity when you're sort of pulsing them out, okay? And it takes a little bit longer than when you take out just basic sort of entities that are astral tagged to people's chakras. And I can take out 6 entities on 6 chakras in a matter of minutes. It doesn't take me long at all, where a normal shaman can take days, weeks, and even months, okay?
Yeah.
And for the walk-ins, the first walk-in I took out, I didn't realise it was a walk-in. I just thought it was just really, I thought it was like entities that just become stuck in some way or there was some problem. And I'm just going, it was this Texas woman and she had been 98% walked in. She was almost gone, fully taken over. And she said to me that basically she'd used this, after I explained what would happen to her, she said she used this walk-in for a long time to basically help her win at card games, like at Vegas.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Because it can presumably see into the future or see through.
Oh, yeah. And say if you're playing a game of chess against someone, there used to be a guy I used to play against years ago, and when I was centered and focused in a natural way, he could never beat me. But when he'd start distracting me, or basically I would start thinking about stuff in my brain, this fucking thing that was attached to him could literally read my fucking mind. And all of a sudden, he'd just work out what the fuck I was doing, and then all of a sudden he'd start kicking my ass in the chess game.
Oh yeah, because they're reading your mind and your plans and and whatever the card players are seeing in front of them, which you can't see.
And in other new age sort of groups that I'd come along just to check out what was going, and I remember this one woman, this one group, and I was saying all of this sort of stuff that all of a sudden I was kind of like the focus of attention, and I was telling everyone there, including the instructors, stuff that they didn't even know. This is like in about 2008, I think it was. And even my mate afterwards said, I had no fucking idea that you knew all that stuff. But what actually happened was when I started thinking about certain stuff, all of a sudden this woman who was part of the group, she started literally extracting everything that was in my mind and coming out. And I'm thinking, how the fuck is she doing this shit? You know?
Yeah.
As soon as I'd stopped thinking in my mind and I just centered in my gut again, they couldn't read me.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So,
could it be that this is why?
Yeah. As soon as you start thinking too much, that's why when I was teaching the center body pendulum stuff, to basically put your tongue on your mouth in a way that when you center, you're actually blocking any sort of possible sort of unwelcome sort of guests in the astral from reading what's coming up from your center.
Oh, I see. Could this be why the spirit of gambling is considered to be so pernicious and is banned by certain religions? Because I suppose when you are, in the midst of gambling, and say all of your money's on the line, then perhaps you will, metaphorically or perhaps literally sell your soul to some kind of entity or devil that's coming in order to win the game, make some kind of deal.
And lots of people in gambling have these fucking astral tags or walk-ins to basically help them. That's basically helping them. So that it's just, the whole card counting thing, the whole everything. Yeah. It's like
everything. I mean, it's funny because a lot of casinos are on indigenous lands because of the tax situation.
It's
there are places where you might expect to find a lot of spiritual activity.
Okay, so getting back to this Texas woman, I remember I had one go for about, I spent 10 minutes on it, and then she's gone, oh, there's something still moving around here. And I said, you're joking. No, she said, no, there's something still there. And then I checked her out, I scanned her, I'm going, fuck, she's right. Okay, so I spent another 10 minutes and just pulsed the fuck out of this thing. And then after that, she's going, oh, I can still feel a trace here. And then I said, okay, that's it. And then I just went full bore for another 10 minutes. And then I finally got it all out of her, and I was fucking exhausted. And I just thought, fucking hell, that was my initiation into taking out a walk-in.
So how many more walk-ins did you do after that?
I did about, I've lost count, because then I started, when I worked out, okay, I did 2 more walk-ins after that, okay? And then I worked out after those 3 walk-ins, I started analysing the situation, and I was so deeply centred, and I was just literally centering all the time, practicing every moment, every day. And I was obsessed with it. It's like anything you want to practice, like a musical instrument. If you want to be good, you got to practice like fuck. And until you become confident and you got some fluidity with it. And I was literally fearless, and I had a lot of confidence, and I was really happy with myself that finally I've worked out how to do this shit, and I've done it myself without any help from anyone, really. I've had to work it out myself with certain intelligent people like Dragon giving me clues. Dragon told me, he said, you got to find your center, man. He said, that's where it all starts. He said, you've got to find it, And he gave me a couple of clues. He said, I've been through all the Castaneda books, and I'll tell you straight away, there's 2 references to centering in all of it, and that's it. And he said, one of the references, Don Juan got so pissed off with Carlos Castaneda, he actually fucking sued him. So Dragon gave me that sort of quick summary, and I knew he wasn't bullshitting, and he was giving me the best of what he'd found out and the crumbs that he'd found out. And then when he told me that he had his pineal gland taken out, and he literally told them at Montauk to do it, because he just said, this thing's getting in the fucking way. And he said once he got it out, he could still basically go into all 9 levels of the astral, no problem, remote view, the whole fucking everything. And that basically told me a lot. And I went, okay,
So that's almost the opposite of the sort of new age information that we're given.
Oh, totally. And it basically told me that my hesitancy to go into third eye visual stuff for most of my life, even though I could do it, I always had a gut feeling that something was wrong with it and you couldn't fully trust it. And so hence this is why I basically learnt everything from my instinct and my gut first to map I've always had this ability with my gut, and all I had to do was map the consciousness of it to not make it unconscious anymore. And that's what I've been doing for over 30 years. And so
was Andrea Auricchio, was she one of the first 3 walk-ins that you took? She was, okay, because I think that there's something interesting there in terms of what I wrote in the document and what you described as the transference of the androgynous mentality of the reptoids onto the people that they've taken over, in terms of the fact that you say that somebody taken over by a top-level Draco, a Shem Draco, if I'm correct, woman, has a square jaw, and I know you're not going to agree with what I say, but the square jaw is actually an indication that the individual is transsexual, and so it may not be a direct morphological feature of the Shem reptoid or whatever, but it may actually be that if these are top level Dracos taking over people, that they do, as I indicated in my document, then become a homosexual and a transsexual.
Okay, I'll validate what you're saying, because that's true, because there is a whole sort of genetic transsexual sort of program going on as well, okay? And really fucked up a lot of people in this world, you know, with regards to this. But what I'm talking about is that when you get into a centered state, and like a centered sort of third eye state, I'd like to call fish eye state now, because I don't use the third eye much at all. Sometimes do, just to check on things, but I find it a sewer. But anyway, is that I could see on people's faces for most of my life all sorts of animals in their faces, okay, that's indicative of their soul totems as well, okay? And also I would see this like overlay when people have got entities and Draco walk-ins in them and stuff like that. There's this certain overlay in their face where I can just tell whether they got sort of a Shem or a Hathor type in them, okay? Because they have this sort of like superimposition on their aura. I think that could be the right terminology. That you can just tell, this person does have a Draco. It's a feeling too. It's like I just know it in my gut, because I can smell when these Dracos are around. I don't even have to see them. I literally just pick up on it in my gut and my nose straight away, because that's the way that I've trained myself all my life. And
for sure.
It's a real Magyar thing too, to work from your gut and your nose, because as we discussed years ago, these reptoids, and in particular primates as well, they've got a really poor sense of smell.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is where we got the edge on them with regards to that, because they got such a poor sense of smell and the whole endocrine disrupted situation. Well, they literally have this gravity to perverseness, you know, because they're into all of this stuff that's foul smelling, but they kind of find it cute but interesting, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like they actually have it like a fetish and a taste for the depraved, because they just literally can't smell how fucking foul it is what they're doing.
Yeah, great,
And
great observations, and thank you so much for all of these insights into this world of the reptoids,
I'd
about
also
which
like to say
the
something.
the modern person is oblivious, and yet,
Yeah,
in fact, even more than people like you and I, who are trying to move away from a society which is ruled by them, the modern person, although they're oblivious to these beings, are completely created by them in terms of their mentality, psychology, and everyday life.
yeah. It's
Is
like,
there anything else that you'd like to add at the end
yes,
of
something very
of the
important here
recording?
is that I noticed that in all the New Age literature and even in Clear Vision and all the rest of it, that when they pull entities out of people, they send it back up to the light. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember.
Now, I really looked at this for a long time and I went, you know what? They're just sending them back into the fucking astral. Or even if they send them in the fire, that's a backdoor to the astral as well. They're just sending them back to they've literally worked out a system where they teach people how to remove entities and stuff, but instead of actually recycling them and coming back as something good, okay,
Yeah.
they send them back to the light, okay, which just basically sends them back to the astral so that these things can go and pollute someone else. So
Yeah.
it keeps recycling this whole sort of fucking entity thing keep on going on. And it's like, yeah, it creates work for shamans and all that sort of stuff, but a real shaman doesn't work for money, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the reason why I don't work for money too, because sure, I need a little bit of money stoically just to get from A to B with what I'm doing in the world that we live in. But
Yeah.
if I sort of do what I do for the sake of material gain or sort of being greedy or this, that, and the other, it's like I lose my gift.
Yeah, I think that's true.
That's how it works in the sense of the centering thing, because you have to be of pure intention. You have to not lie to yourself. You have to not bullshit yourself, and you have to tell the truth. And I had to do a lot of work to get to that stage from the horrible start I had in life, because I didn't trust adults after all the early ritual stuff. So I used to tell lies to protect myself because I couldn't tell anyone the truth because I never trusted anyone. And that was really challenging.
I'm the same. I'm the same. I have very few relationships with people in the older generation, and you're one of the very few people in the older generation who I actually will consider talking to.
Because I'm not here to destroy you. We're here to have fierce sort of debate. But at the end of the day, you know, the love still remains. And the highest form of love you can actually give to someone is your time and your energy, because you can never get your time back. Okay.
Yeah,
And the thing is that the gift of true knowledge is the highest form of love, as far as I'm concerned.
absolutely. Well, actually, it's the sort of male com 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 the male complement to the highest form of female love, which is compassion.
Yeah. And while I'm quite hardcore, I've been through stuff. It's like I'm a bit rough around the edges at times. But from what I've been through, I'm actually pretty well adjusted. It's
I
like,
think so. I think so. Yeah, I mean, you're able to have like conversations without freaking out. You're able to communicate your ideas clearly. And the last question I was going to ask you was if within this shamanic process of clearing entities, which you view as problematic, in terms of sending them to the fire or sending them to the light. How do you see the real solution to this
oh,
problem
great.
of where to
I'm
send them?
glad you asked that question, because what I worked out to do is like, I just started looking at the nature of energy and like shit energy, and where's the best place. It's like you look at, okay, we basically breathe oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide, right? And carbon
Yeah,
dioxide to us is fucking poison in the sense of we don't want to breathe it, okay? But to plants, carbon dioxide is oxygen, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a good thing. So I'm thinking of sort of like an antigen sort of in nature. It's actually going to...
Carbon dioxide is what a plant uses to synthesize sugar out of sunlight.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's more complex than that, but
Yeah.
essentially what they do is they
So I
breathe in carbon dioxide and then they integrate it into the sugar molecule, which is then the basis of their entire metabolism.
Okay, so then I started looking at sort of crystals and rocks, and then I noticed with all these rubies and emeralds and things like that, well, hold it, that's all crystal that can hold memory. And depending on how that's all charged and what it's holding, it can hold a lot of foul fucking energy and even entities and shit like that as well, okay? So I started thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to use that sort of stuff. But when I just looked at simple rocks in nature and stuff like that, they literally love absorbing crap energy because they recycle it all back through the earth, okay? And then I'm going, okay, this is quite simple. Where's the best place to put shit? Where's the best place for manure? In the fucking garden, in the dirt.
Yeah, right.
So I would send these things and recycle them all through the dirt, and then the water, and then the lowlands, and then back up to Vilagtunga, and I'd use the what's called a forget-me-not or a fireweed pollen ball or a dandelion pollen ball as my perfect sort of template of the balance of the feminine shape held up by the masculine sort of spores coming out from the center of the core of that feminine shape. And there you have perfect balanced sort of archetype of organic creation with an equal amount of feminine and masculine, how it actually exists, how the masculine actually holds together the womb of the actual omniverse itself. Okay? And I basically used that as a last sort of process. I'd go through the land, the water, the lowlands, and then back out to Vilagtunga. So I had initially I used to do it to the dirt. Then I realized that the elites were starting to dig them up out of the fucking dirt. And I'm going, fuck, I fucked up. So basically then I worked out, I've got to do a more thorough process and put it through the fourfold phase. And right at the end, I would just literally pulse it with the omniversal sort of like nature archetype symbol, and nothing could get through that.
Right. So how do you exactly describe Vilagtunga? And is this the same as the Eurasian Tengri, which means, or Indra, or in Peruvian terms, Inti, which means the sky or heaven?
I was talking to an Islander fella today, actually, I met on Facebook, and he was talking about Tangara. And I went, oh, wow. And he was saying one of the meanings is actually people of the ocean. And I said, oh, right, in your language, the A on the end is a suffix that indicates people, those people of. And you've got Tangara as well, okay, which is ocean. So even in his language, which it was sort of Melanesian or Polynesian, Melanesian, that sort of area where they had the same root Turanian sort of language as Magyar, okay, in the ancient sense, because that's what they all spoke as well. He basically gave me two meanings for Tangara, and the second meaning was people of the ocean. And I said, well, there you go. It's the same word in Magyar as Tunga. And also the Woiwoi tribes had an older dialect, and they called it Tinga, okay, with an I instead of an E. And I think the E valve is something the pervachy introduced more in sort of modern sort of ancient sort of times to sharpen up the sort of language, I think, where you notice in Australia that with the oldest dialects here, they don't actually have the vowel E. It's interesting.
I see. So this is explaining places like Tangiers, which is where Morocco meets the sea, and of course Tonga in the ocean east of Australasia, and Nusa Tenggara in Indonesia.
Yeah, and the thing is that Vilagtunga literally means the ancient world of sea or ocean, which literally is what space is, what we know as space.
Yeah, I mean, again, this goes back to the Egyptian thing about the immaterial world of Nuit and space, and how the ancient Magi thought of space as an ocean, and indeed,
Exactly.
Yeah, and indeed, they actually in the high antiquity or paleo antiquity, you know, obviously they were connected to actual spacefaring civilizations, so it was indeed an ocean which could be crossed.
Yeah. So what I see from here,
ships.
yeah. So what I see with the whole reptoid situation is that we're starting to basically tie up the gap between my sort of story of shamanic sort of knowledge and how I come across these Draco types and all the rest of it, and the scientific information in the biological evolutionary sort of sense that you know, and literally merging the two together because they both are relevant. And what we're going to do is, as we break down all of these different Shems and Hathors and all the different hybrids that stem off them all, we're going to identify more of these scientific genotypes that you're basically identifying through the Pterosaurus.
Oh yeah, I mean the Pterosauria are one of these groups of fossils which are underrepresented, and the reason for that is because they evolved flight. And so what happens when a chordate, which means an animal with a vertebra or a vertebral column, or in most cases a skeleton, is that the skeleton, the bone, becomes lightweight, and that means it becomes honeycombed into a lightweight sort of, you know, analogous to carbon fiber in aeroplanes, you know, using lightweight materials. So what this has meant, I mean, another example of an underrepresented, you know, clades of organisms which don't form fossils so readily is things like the Edicarian assemblage, which was before the Cambrian explosion, and other animals such as mollusks, which have which are primarily soft tissue, like or say the primitive groups of early of ocean organisms which don't have any hard parts. So it's a similar situation in the Pterosauria in terms of the fossil record being highly unrepresented, because the bones evolved into a lightweight form which then doesn't easily leave remains. So I think there's only something like 30 something skeletons of pterosaurs from which we know them. So it is possible that it's a much more extensive group of it's a much larger group than we know, because of this phenomenon of the bones becoming lightweight. And obviously if they then evolved back into ground dwelling organisms in terms of anthropoids, which then left the stone tools 65 million years ago, and perhaps there are fossils of those. They would have evolved stronger bones again. The bones would have then parallel evolved back into a terrestrial stronger bone, which is not broken so easily by the rigors of terrestrial life.
And then you've got, in an evolutionary sense as well, the fact that the oxygen-carbon sort of ratio in the Earth, from what it was in ancient times to now, it is literally diminished like fuck.
There's much less carbon. I mean, we're looking at like 30% carbon dioxide content. 65 million years
I spoke to a geologist friend of mine who was really all over this. That's Julian, that guy I introduced you to. Who's involved in the West Papuan situation there, where Indonesia
I remember
the West Papuans at the moment, and no one seems to be giving a fuck in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an appalling situation.
Yeah, it is an appalling situation. And yeah, he's actually a really good scientist like yourself. And he was telling me about the oxygen levels and carbon levels, like in the times that there were giant trees and we were giant and stuff like that. Well, it could support such big life. But now, I don't know if that would be the case unless in the other areas of Earth that have been closed off from us, from the sort of testimony of this guy named Shane Bales, who was basically used to communicate to all of these giants that the elites actually have in some secluded parts of the Earth that I reckon is outside the sort of the map zone that we're on, okay? Because from what I found out, like in the Vedas, it says, you know, one part of the Earth is 800,000 miles sort of across, and then the whole Earth realm itself, in the full sense, is like 40 billion miles, okay?
Yeah, but you've got to remember that the Vedas were dealing with, again, paleo-ancient knowledge, and so some of those measurements may have actually been interplanetary.
Oh, yeah, totally. And the fact that they've all been rewritten since the time of Alexander is also another problem as well. But there's got to be some truth in there. But the thing is,
sure.
I remember Dr. Phil Valentine had this star map of the whole omniverse, it seemed. But now I realise that it's a star map of the whole territory of Earth with all of these other star systems and animals and things like that in the astronomy and the astrology. And I'm going, the stuff that we're seeing from Earth and the position we're in, I reckon we're only getting part of the picture, mate.
Yeah, probably. I mean, the even the Earth as it is, the known Earth is huge, but we are living inside an illusion caused by hypermobility of the world being small. But I mean, even the known world, well, if you were to traverse it on foot or by boat, you know, it's absolutely enormous, especially the South Pacific.
Well, the thing is that there's some aspects of the flat Earth thing that are definitely on the money, that definitely tell us that, you know, there's more to Earth than what we know. But the thing is that the Earth is a body, right? Okay. And it has meridians.
Okay, I don't think this is like directly relevant to the case. Do you want to go back to what you were saying before about getting into a breakdown of the reptoid, a breakdown of the reptoid types?
Okay, I'd just like to say it's relevant in the sense because this particular sort of star map thing, Dr. Valentine found, I'm pretty sure he sourced it from Australia too. And I literally saw all of these animals in the astrology and astronomy and configurations, and I'm going, man, that is so vast. Why don't we know about it? And why is this being kept from us? And I've seen this thing a couple of times. And now that I've looked at it and I've got more of a spatial awareness of what possibly could be, because one thing I've got to say is that the real north and south, north is above our head and south is below our feet. And what they've fooled us into is this magnetic north sort of thing with the compass, to when the Dracos basically smashed Maru with the Iron Comet to magnetize everything to be north like that. But real north is actually above our head and south is below our feet. And the real equator is actually vertical, to be in line with the center of our body down our chakras from the crown, the same as it being vertical of the Earth. And this is what's stopping people from actually doing proper dreaming out in the Milky Way, because what you've got to do is connect the center of you with the center equator line of the Earth, which is vertical, okay? And then you basically connect it with the center of this galaxy, which is the Milky Way, and then you can really go start to party and be first sort of hand experience with everything. And this is how...
I'll tell you what happened to me in the year 2000.
This is how the agents can read the star maps properly. And I've had this experience reading star maps myself up at Carry On, right through the full moon, and just like a goanna, looking at all sides of the star map from different angles and seeing the light at different times during the night, Man, it is incredible the vastness of what you can pick up through spirit communicating with you if you're centered and you're actually observing stuff properly. Yeah,
Well,
it's just
what happened to me in December
yeah.
of 2020 when I had this experience, when I was able to move matter with my mind, and then I was picked up by these, and I was able to do things like stop breathing and enter nirvana and all kinds of things, and I was picked up by these Freemasonic scumbags who then raped me and did all the rest of it. And I think, and they wanted to put me in some kind of program where they were studying.
So you're basically getting into like telekinesis sort of like abilities from what you're describing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the main reasons they picked me up, is because my roommate could see that I'd changed the wall of my student bedroom, which he shared with me. And so I think one of the things that happened was that he reported me to the authorities that I'd done this, and then so that would have brought in all kinds of behind the scenes, scumbags and
things off. Yeah. And
all
I
the
did.
rest of it. But yeah, after I got out the first time, I was allowed to leave for Christmas. I went and I was taken to Herefordshire by my family to stay with my aunt, and so we were sort of away from the sort of black magic grids of the cities, and I out in the countryside. And I actually had an experience where one of the things that was happening was that I was aware that I was entering what I called, without knowing any of the 5D, new age programming, which may be distorted. And I also had the sort of bodhisattva like realization without having any of the knowledge of Buddhism either. In terms of realizing that.
See, that's just pure instinct and natural centering.
Yeah, it's just natural instinct.
Yeah.
But I just worked it all out for myself. That the true self is actually the everything, and so by living in accordance with by living in a way that is looking after other beings, we're actually just looking after ourselves, because the top perspective on the self is that it is omniversal. But yeah, this thing about entering a space where your mind is able to go beyond time. When I was able to go into Herefordshire,
you're going to that non-time place. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when I was taken to Herefordshire, I was actually able to see heaven from this 5D perspective. And in this perspective, all of the stars were not points, but they were actually lines in heaven. So I think that part of the the concept of making constellations is related to this phenomenon of how the stars actually appear in the fifth dimension, and they're all lines. They're not points. They're all lines.
Oh, absolutely. And
when I went to Colombia in 2007, I actually and funnily enough, actually, while I was having this experience in Herefordshire, I was in a bedroom with my brother, and I woke up and I told him what had happened, and that I could, and about seeing these stars, and I actually almost wanted to go outside of the window, but I didn't, because I didn't really want to connect to the experience too deeply or enter that dimension too deeply. And I came to I thought that I went back to my bed, and then I started talking to my brother, and I said, "Did you see me by the window?" And he said, "No, you were asleep and you were snoring." So I think what had actually happened is that I was actually out of my body in an astral body.
You're going for an astral travel, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually in an astral travel, and then I met in 2007. 7 years later, I met a Japanese girl, and obviously I spent a couple of evenings with her, because I love to socialize with Japanese people, and she told me that she had seen exactly the same thing when she'd taken LSD. She said, "Yeah, you can see the sky from a," and she's called Miwako, right? And she's now had children in Japan. I haven't seen her since 2007. But she's a lovely person, and she said that she saw exactly the same thing when she took LSD. And so it comes back to this whole thing about LSD and the fact that it can open you up to all kinds of different dimensions, and how that is actually within MK Ultra probably a gateway to the Kabbalistic state, and opening up your circle or cutting your circulation so that these Draco entities can walk into people.
Oh yeah, especially if you're not a naturally centered person.
Yeah, if you take LSD, you're done.
You're done. And the thing is with me is that I've been so naturally centered all my life, especially as a young child. I was incredibly intuitive and psychic and everything. And after I basically got beaten up through all the rituals and went into a lot of trauma and shock and all the rest of it.
Yeah, to induce the Kabbalistic state in you.
Yeah.
To square your circle as or cut your circulation, cut your etheric circulation.
And so, but then the rest of my life, I found I was a natural at most things I put my hand at, whether it was sport or music or art or whatever. I could do anything I wanted that I focused on. And but then when you actually consciously learn to center and you don't just fluke getting in the zone, okay?
Yeah.
Some people kind of know, okay, I've got to get myself in the zone, so they relax themselves and prepare themselves to get into the zone so they perform well all the time. So that's their own sort of way of doing it. But when you actually become conscious of the instructional process, of the metaphysics involved, you can literally get yourself into that centered state very quickly and not fluking it. And when you're doing it in a conscious way, plus having that naturalism with you as well, that's when you really become your own soul governor, so to speak. And
right, and isn't it interesting, going back to linguistics, that the word zone is actually another embodiment of the word one and sun?
Yes, and isn't it interesting how the word for one in English is actually the reverse of the English word now, but you're actually won as like you've won a game. And it's like I actually use this phrase omni one. It's just my own thing to literally
game is another example of the word kaba. So if you're in a game, you're being cut up, and then if you won the game, it means you've resolved or returned to wholeness.
Because when I do certain earth custodian sort of work, at the end of a certain process, I basically finish with going now, like omni now, like literally the whole of the omni reality polarity, omnipolarity, whatever I've just done, the last thing I go, let it all be present right now. And that's how I end. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's go back to the breakdown of the Draco types.
Okay. So you'll find some literature out there about the Siakas, and they are red and white Dracos, and they're quite high up the Shem sort of chain. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
One variety. You find a lot of names everywhere, like Credo Mutwa talks about the Chitahari, and they're Dracos.
Okay.
Okay. And it's like they've got all different names. Like you've got the jinn in the sort of the Arab sort of like Moorish science, Muslim sort of knowing. There's lots of different names for them in different cultures. But I guess I should have done some homework and gathered all that. And I actually did call on a couple of people to say, give me all your Draco information so we can synthesize it.
Well, you were saying that you break them down in terms of having different colors, and some of them have horns and some of them don't have horns.
Yep, and they have certain facial features, whether they're squarish, The Hathors tend to have more of a cone head-like sort of thing in some of their varieties.
Okay.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different variations of these things. Like literally, if you look at Star Wars, just in that sort of, even the first Star Wars, and you look at that bar scene with Luke Skywalker when he's first in there, mate, they're literally showing you a whole heap of Draco hybrids right there.
Yeah, sure.
A whole heap of
Is
different.
there anything else that you want to add before I go away and document all of this recording?
Well, basically speaking, if you want to connect with the source consciousness itself, and everything in your immediate surroundings, the deeper you go inside your center, the more that you connect with everything outside of you. So it's inward action happening outwards, okay? It's not like, and they condition us in the matrix to look outside of ourselves for salvation all the time, where all the answers are within.
True.
Okay.
True.
And even psychiatry says you're a fucking madman if you look within, and that's just a fucking joke, you know.
And so psychiatry traces to MK Ultra, so it's a false claim.
It's just a fucking gatekeeping process for the fucking pervachs, you know, so they can get away with all the occult nonsense. And as soon as you say Freemason,
I think it's also a torture process. I think it's also a chemical torture modality.
Oh yeah. Oh, and speaking of that, I want to break down the word alchemy. Okay, this is another big deception. This is because the word chem in chemistry, CHEM, breaks back down to the Magyar word chem, K-E-M, and the E has got a forward dash over it. It means to spy, okay, spying, okay?
Right, yeah, and of course a lot of these alchemist people who are into this kind of old Western occultism are using it to astrally spy on people.
Okay, and this gets better. Or worse, depending on which way you look at it. I'm sort of being half sort of, you know, joking about it. But it's not a joke. And you look at the word al on the front of alchemy, okay? Now, al is a Magyar word that indicates from below or beneath. So, with alchemy, is spying from beneath. And people think, oh, the astral and everything is all in the higher realms. Well, they've kind of inverted everything in this satanic world, haven't they not? So they're actually spying from beneath.
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing is that what it should be now.
So this is really related to all the concepts of underworld and so
forth. Yeah. And the thing is with alchemy, they talk about turning lead into gold, and you've got to learn how to do that within yourself first, you know, to turn your heart into crystal and all that fucking shit. But you know what? It literally makes you into a perfect vessel for a fucking Draco to walk in. While conning you into thinking that you're becoming a fucking master.
Yeah. So
an ascended master. It's like
there's a deception at the core of all of the different ways in which you can essentially break your internal organic energy circulation and become a squared circle, so that through that cut in the circle, an entity can walk into you.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today.
Yes.
And so I will translate all this material into a document, which is going to take me forever, but I'm happy to do it. And yeah, we've got to submit it by the 15th or latest by the 16th, which is on Thursday, I think. So yeah, lot of work to do this week.
I'd just like to say, as a solution, and this idea was from Attila Flink himself. He said it should be chemistry, K-E-N, which is an old Magyar word. If you look at that up now, K-E / over the E and then N, it just says sulfur, okay? It's only telling you half the truth of the real meaning of the word, because can literally means of organic material with specific reference to sulfur being the main element of all organic material life.
Yeah, and of course,
Look how
I mean
deep
that may be a mystical concept, but I mean if we take sulfur, then we boost the glutathione, which is the electron donor.
Exactly.
So we will boost the static charge of our body.
Say it again.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is that if we take sulfur, we boost the glutathione production, which is the primary endogenous antioxidant or electron donor of the body. So we then are boosting the organic electrostatic charge of the body.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And
so we are in a sense circling the square, if you want to sort of reverse the Kabbalistic metaphor.
I'm doing the reverse child psychology back on the idiot.
Oh, that was the other topic. That was the other topic, the reverse child psychology. Do you want to cover that briefly?
Yes, because basically with the voice to skull sort of situation, I'm just going to fucking say it now. At first, they were fucking terrorizing me. They were doing multiple psyops. They were trying to draw me into fake astral programs in the third eye.
You said that they had threatened your daughter in some way, or said that your daughter was being ritualized.
Oh, yeah, they set me up for a faux pas thing with something that actually really happens to make me basically look like an idiot. And they're using my primal protective instincts against myself in this sense. This is what these Dracos will do, and the elites.
So was your daughter actually physically involved, and you were sort of defamed to your daughter?
Yes.
You were made to look an idiot in front of your daughter.
Well, basically, they're basically telling me that, and also through my mate, also in Melbourne, it wasn't just the voice to skull. They worked it on a couple of angles here. Okay, that basically my daughter was in danger and being ritualed at some rich residence down the road. Okay.
Yeah.
In literally sort of like a pervachy sort of, high Masonic sort of residence of those sorts of people. And when push came to shove, if my daughter was in danger, how could I live with myself if I didn't go in and check it out?
Yeah.
So I ended up trespassing on this property. I didn't end up injuring anyone or doing anything. In fact, there was a security guard there that accosted me and almost broke my neck. And that basically didn't get reported, by the witnesses or police or anything like that.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But at the end of the day, in that situation, I explained the situation, and the police just ended up dropping me home, and they gave me a ticket for trespassing, and that was it. And I thought it was really unusual how they didn't take me to the police station and charge me. They just gave me a ticket. So that made me suspect there might have been something happening there, and they're just trying to cover, just hush up the incident. Okay, you've been a bad boy. Here's your ticket. Fuck off home. Don't come back.
Yeah, and they didn't want it on record.
Yes. And then I went back 6 months later, still wondering about it, because I did see a woman in there that did look like someone that I know, okay, that was a bit freaky. And I went back, but I observed the place from a public vantage point where you're allowed to be. And I just took a couple of pictures. I looked at the place. I was just feeling it out. And that was it. That's all I did. And basically the security sort of recognised me. There was someone in the house that recognised me from before, and they got the police down there, and 6 cops came down and gave me a move on order. And all I was doing at that stage was just sitting in this public vantage point where I was allowed to be, minding my own business, not doing anything. It was a really hot day. It was good to be down there because I was getting some ocean breeze.
Yeah.
And I also checked out this pervachy exhibition of really morbid sculptures that they had happen through this building and this walk.
That sounds a bit like such a stone.
Okay. And basically, So the cops gave me a move on order. I went home. I basically said, okay, all that sort of stuff. And then 3 days later, a cop came round to my house and said, you're under arrest for trespassing, for stalking, for this. They just trumped up all these fucking charges. And I said, hold it. I just walked down there. I was in a public place. You know, I didn't try to go back into the joint or anything. I'm still working out my own things here, okay? And what you're saying is not true. And I shut the door on the policeman's head, not the head, face, okay? Locked the door, and I pissed off outside my house through the back. And the police didn't catch up with me for about another week. And when they did catch up with me, they sent 4 cops and a detective in after me, and they broke in my back door to basically get me because I wasn't answering the front door. And I had these neighbours that were dobbing in on me all the time. This drunk neighbour next door that was astral tagged as well, who was complaining about all my shamanic sort of tones and stuff when I'm doing sort of work, when I'm going, and when I'm really starting to literally use my body as its own didgeridoo and playing monotonal music and tones through my organs and stuff like that. And yeah, it has very powerful sort of effects when you do it all properly, especially with original sort of creation words and things like that in the original language that I specifically focus on, even though I can't speak the language fluently yet. But I'm someone who analyzes systems and architectural designs and structures and stuff like that because I'm someone who sees the big picture first. I'm one of those people. So that's what I was doing. And this particular neighbour started calling the cops because she was on the terps all the time, an alcoholic idiot. And I was just in my own kitchen doing all this stuff, and she's just telling me to fuck off and shut up while she's hanging out the washing next door. And I'm thinking, who the fuck are you? Anyway, and eventually she called the cops that many times that eventually one day they sent the riot cops, you know, the guys in the Kevlar uniforms, and they busted down my front door, and I was in bed upstairs, right?
Wow.
And I'm going, okay, I'm coming out. And then literally I walk out, and then there's this sort of nurse, you know, from the psychiatric sort of ward saying, Stephen, I heard your doctor haven't taken your fucking meds yet. And I said, I don't even take any fucking meds, you fucking idiot. I said, do you even know what? I said, you don't even know what you're talking about. And I just completely made this fucking nurse look like an absolute fucking fool, okay?
Yeah.
And there was literally a crowd out on the street because there was like fire engines, ambulances and cops. Oh, mate, they called everyone out. It was ridiculous. You know, it was a total overreaction. And I got taken up to the site.
Well, it sounds like your neighbour was sort of very much exaggerating or elaborating a story.
And I actually got a witness to her lies and how she was spreading stories, and she was a drunk and all that sort of stuff. And that witness went up to the police station and made an affidavit. And then I used that affidavit while I was in the psychiatric ward to get them to release me. And I got myself released days later, but it was something, I didn't need that fucking shit. And they were trying to force meds into me again and all the rest of it. And I was basically exercising my rights and basically pretending to do it. And then as soon as they were out of sort of eye shot, I'd fucking throw the fucking pill on my tongue, you know, down the fucking drain or something like that. And it was just ridiculous. And then I basically had a meeting with the psychiatrist and all the nurses, and there were all these social workers there. And I basically I wrote out all of my health regimen for every day and all the different amino acids and herbs and everything that I do, because I'm absolutely on top of my nutrition. And I know nutrition better than most sort of doctors and health practitioners because I'm on it all the time, because I've had no choice but to learn how to heal myself. And so I've been through so many fucking injuries that I can't even begin to describe that it would take another 3 hours. But we're not here for that. And so basically I got myself out of that situation, and I addressed the psychiatrist in a legal sort of way. And I said, look at all of this. I'm healing myself. Okay, I don't need to be back here again. You injured me before with the medications that you gave me, and I've had to work really hard to heal myself. And I presented myself so well that all the social workers basically believed what I was saying and the integrity of what I was saying. And after that, I got released because the social workers literally went, no, you can't keep this man in here. No way. You know, here's the affidavit that shows the neighbour is unconscionable and a vexatious litigant in the first place. And
Yep.
I did it all by the book, and bang, I was out of there. But this is the thing. These pervachs were looking for any way for me to basically get locked up, okay? And
yeah, I got the impression about psychiatry from my experiences of having it used against me by
Yep.
these sex abusers and criminal Freemasons in the UK.
yeah,
I sort of got the impression that, you know, they're like sort of they're like assassins in a way. They're sort of like
assassins, yeah.
yeah, they're like assassins, and they have a way because everything that they do is pseudo-scientific with the aim of, as you say, selling drugs from the pharmaceutical petrochemical industry, and also for the aim of you know, essentially chemically torturing you. They will twist anything that you say any which way. So they, I would say to anybody who gets involved with psychiatrists, best you just don't talk to them at all. And that's how I got out of it in the UK, was just like I was just monosyllabic with them. I didn't engage. Don't
Yep.
engage with them, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you say. They have a way to twist anything that you say
Oh, totally.
into
That's what they did to me.
the foregone conclusion. It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
foregone conclusion that you have to be on drugs under their pseudo-scientific diagnoses.
Well,
So
like the first time I got injected was because literally they found a fucking false report that my brother filed with the actual
yeah, and your brother is said to be a to be crazy himself. So how much of a bypass is that?
well, exactly. And the fact is that he put in some false report, like he was ringing up Triple O to say that I was a threat to him and shit like that. And it was all this false fucking shit, you know. And it was literally a defamation of character, actually. And literally, when I went into emergency at the beginning of 2017, when I literally had some serious body problems, and they ended up literally assaulting me and butchering me like it was an assault like you wouldn't fucking believe. And
Right. Yeah.
and they shoved me through.
I mean, when they did this to me, I ended up on the operating table 3 times.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, my Montauk ex-programmer contact reckons they basically stole certain body fluids from me while I was basically out for 4 or 5 hours.
And is that connected to some sort of occult science in terms of tapping into you?
Yep.
Okay, just to finish off,
I'm not going to
I think
specifically what they stole from me because I'm still investigating it. But
yeah,
it's like, but the thing is that it was just that false report of my brother that basically they just used that to basically lock me up. It was fucking believable.
yeah. I found body fluids within the psychiatric facility I was placed in first in 2000. I found body fluids and hair and things from other people that contained DNA and things like that placed in the room that I was, that was from other people. So I felt strongly that they were trying to connect me with other individuals in terms of this resonant genetic energy.
Well, something I've worked out further is that because these psychiatric drugs have certain toxics and metals in them that obviously work for, you know, antenna and all that sort of stuff, certain sorcerers basically use psychiatric patients when they're doped up on certain medications as literally like a medium to basically work through and actually mind control and use. It's really fucking insidious because fluoride itself has some very deep alchemical properties to it.
Do you remember the story that I told you when I took one of these olanzapine pills apart, and it had a piece of packaging foam, which is the CFC or chlorofluorocarbon type plastic or polymer on the inside. So I think there's definitely the sense that the fluorine or some kind of fluoride compound was a core component of this material. And I just thought, why are they giving me plastic to eat? That's toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like they put all sorts of industrial toxic textiles and fucking shit together, you know. It's the same with the genetic equation too when they're really doing.
And you're saying it's also a component of the PPE or the masks that they're using on this for this COVID psyop.
Oh yeah, well, like the graphene oxide that's basically in the mask.
Yeah, and possibly fluorine. Well, they're textile masks. They're masks made of textiles.
And there's also fluoride byproducts in the masks as well. And some people have found in the mask material as well these Morgellon-like sort of moving sort of worm sort of characters that, you know, it's pretty freaky fucking shit.
It is very, especially when you see everybody on the street wearing them.
Yeah, so there was a point I was going to make about the voice to skull at the beginning. I just want to get back and finish that. Is that after a while, I thought, okay, it's the same low rent consciousness that they're just trying to fucking bombard me with constant negativity to stress me out, to overload me, give me a nervous breakdown, all the rest of it. And then I realised, okay, I'm going to use this as batting practice. I'm going to back engineer everything that they're doing, all the AI stuff they've got on me, all the AI responses and different algorithms of responses to different thoughts and feelings that I'd have. And I'd literally back engineer it all. I'd back engineer what part of the brain they were sending messages through, the voice to skull. I'd do the fucking lot of it. And then I'd back engineer all their psychology with this reverse child psychology that I'd reverse all of their curses back onto them, okay? And then I literally did it as batting practice, as I said, so I could learn how to hit them with their own cricket bat so I could save all my precious sort of soul juice for doing earth custodian work.
Yeah.
And I used it as
practice. So what sort of lessons did you learn from about the reverse child psychology? Is
that they have a low rent consciousness that is a denial, a belief of denial. They're all about denial. So when they deny and they say, fuck you, when you basically ask them a question that's very truthful and they can't wriggle out of it, I say, thank you for your recalcitrant denial confirmation of everything I just said. And then when they say something negative, they work in opposites, you know, the negatives, like you have a thought and then they say the negative or something like that. I say, oh, you say that, the opposite must be true. And they fucking hate that one. I've got it down to such a simple but effective thing now. And it's similar to the Marine Admiralty law process you take into court, because you will always win in court if you always ask your question. You basically make statements in the form of questions. And if you ask it in the form of the question, and basically
then they have to answer you.
Exactly. And if they refute what you say, then the onus is on them to fucking prove it. So you ask a certain key critical question and they don't answer it 3 times, they secede. That's their own fucking Marine Admiralty law fucking tic-tac.
I remember. As a final question from me to you.
So basically, how's it helped me? Mate, there's no one I can't fucking out debate when it comes to when you're dealing with fucking logic and truth and psychology, and because I'm a psychological profiler all my life anyway, I can literally, from what someone provides and brings to the table, that tells me everything about that person.
Yeah,
It shows me their insecurities, it shows me their strengths, it shows me absolutely everything. And I can read people just on that basic psychological level without even having to get woo-woo. You know what I'm saying? Without getting or anything.
Yeah, and I think that that's good, because the more that you can bring this kind of information down to earth, the more people are going to believe it. Yeah, the more people are going to engage with it.
Because everyone doesn't understand the metaphysical that, you know, controls the physical. Okay, I've got to put it into simple fucking logic for everyone to get. And also, if I get too out there with this sort of stuff, like with this reptoid stuff and whatever, you know, with the shamanistic sort of terms they're unfamiliar with, they're just going to say, oh, he's a fucking crazy idiot, lock him up and all that sort of thing. But if I can basically do it all with language and logic and psychological profiling and reverse child psychology, bam, I can smash you with your own fucking cricket bat without even having to use my abilities and gifts.
Yeah, great stuff, man.
So that's what I've learned, James. That's what I've got out of this, because the shamanistic approach is, whenever you're going through shit, there's always the challenge of a bigger opportunity and positive out of that shit, if you can basically use it as an opportunity. Yes.
I think that that's a great metaphor for this case as well.
Yes.
So final question. Obviously, we've now exceeded 3 hours just on this one call, and we talked before that for about maybe an hour.
Yeah, we had 3 interrupted sort of sessions of 20 minutes where they just like cock-blocked us the whole time, because we're literally hitting on really deep legal points and the rest of it. And, oh yeah, by the way, the Levite priests are the silent fucking heads above the judges of the whole legal system, and they're fucking sorcerers. And they also hold the Levite priest code book, which is the math formulas for all the confusion of the tongues, languages. And did I get blocked out?
Do you feel that these Levites are themselves walked in by the reptoids?
Oh, fucking oath, they have to be to keep on doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned
how could you
their psychology
and being two-faced about it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that their psychology is based on denial. I mean, that's a basic. Well,
that's how psychopathy works. It's a belief of denial.
And I guess they also have to deny to themselves that they've essentially sold their soul to the devil.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a huge area of denial, and of course, you know, selling your soul is not something that can ever really bring you satisfaction. It always was a trick, and these reptoids are going to use you and then spit you out when the time comes, and you'll never have any of the kind of happiness that you wanted.
Yeah, when these types are this far gone, they can't face themselves. That's the most horrible possible thing, worse than death, that they could ever do, is face themselves. And this is what I do through the Poison Skull, and also if I meet any of these fuckers in real life, is I know how to get them to face themselves, and I know how to basically drop information on people that literally can change their whole consciousness and life in a fucking moment.
Yeah, because they're what they want to do is keep playing the game. They want to keep playing the game of putting you in fear, which confirms their power. And then so they don't have to face themselves.
So when you stand up to these fuckers and you're centered, and you just say, fuck you, in the sense of like, I'm not putting up with any of your shit and your fucking 3-year-old on fucking methamphetamine, Lord of Flies on steroids, fucking belligerent, fucking spoiled, fucking prat fucking shite, you know, 3-year-old driving a fucking Ferrari. It's like now the hunters, which they are sadistic hunters, coward, weakling, sadistic hunters, literally become the hunted. You reverse the roles on them.
Yeah.
And that's all about eliminating all the cover and the fear. The cover being the psychological illusion, under illusion, the spell people are under, and also that they're literally drugged when they're on it. And the thing is that this constant sadistic torture and trauma-based mind control they do on people, they literally, it creates this Stockholm syndrome, you know, in the entire world. Like, look at all these people lining up for fucking jabs, you know?
Yeah.
That's just pure Stockholm syndrome. They literally love their fucking abusers.
Yeah, capture bonding. Capture bonding. Let's move to the final question now, which is which has come to me during this 3 hours of talking to you, which will be our last journal session, which I will then go away and document. The final question, which has sort of come to me, refers back to Mr. Fuck Me, I'm Jesus. Obviously, you know, having talked to you over this 3 hours, it's occurred to me that taking these Draco or reptoid entities out of people seems to be something which is not possible even for shamans. And so, do you think that makes Fuck Me, I'm Jesus a real menace to society? Because it sounds like, from what you've conveyed to me, it sounds like he's doing an almost irreversible spiritual process on people that they can't get out of, even if they go to all the lengths of contacting indigenous shamans and people like that.
Unless you come across a shaman that knows centering, you're fucked. So yeah, you're literally going to go all around the block looking for an energy healer or someone to help you, and you're going to go through all of these people until you hopefully find the right one that gets this fucking shit out of you. And it's terrible process for people, because it's like, you know, the fact that normal sort of allopathic medicine and science and all that stuff on purpose doesn't recognize this stuff, because the pervachy set it up that way so they can do all this fucking nefarious sort of magic behind closed doors in sort of rituals in secret societies, you know, that they got this full sort of immunity. And because they basically, in the mainstream, they say, oh, this stuff doesn't exist, you know. Oh, we're all educated.
I mean, in medical terms,
professional people, and I got charisma, and I can charm the pants of you, and I'll keep logical, and I'll be a two-faced fucking moron to you until the cows come home. The Ku Klux Klan, cowbell planet. Because you're all
So in medical terms. In medical terms, Mr. Fuck Me, I'm Jesus is almost giving people a terminal condition or a terminal disease.
Oh, yeah. If those people don't empower themselves and work out how to center or get someone to help them in that regard to heal that sort of crap out of them, oh, yeah, he's a fucking predatory fucking menace that basically, it's like, I'm not going to say the things that I would do, but I will say back in 2015, I did line up people exactly like him worldwide, including the Pope and the Queen and people like that, so I could take out all of these collectives of Dracos full fucking stop.
Yeah.
Because once I saw their Achilles heel, do you think I fucked around? No. I'm someone, as soon as I see a solution or an answer, I don't fuck around. I go straight to it and bang.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today. I realize it's a great investment of your time and effort to explain all these things over the phone, and I will do my best to record this in the documentation for the High Court, and I hope that this will serve as some kind of permanent record from which people in the future can find the guidance that they need to make society across the world better for human beings.
And just one last thing, I would like to say for people out there that there is an official record that satanic ritual abuse does exist. There's 10 cases registered with the London Metropolitan Police of satanic ritual abuse, okay? I'd like to thank Wilfred Wong for that information. He's been working at this stuff for 27 years, and I've sort of followed a little bit of his sort of work and what he's been doing. So the fact is, in Australia at the moment, I saw they did a Four Corners program that was a terrible bit of propaganda. It was involving the Prime Minister and some person he knew that was a truther and that sort of thing, and they were saying he was having wild conspiracy sort of things and shit like that. And they were saying it how, okay, pedophilia exists and abuse of women and rape and all that sort of stuff, but as soon as it came to the satanic ritual abuse, they had this fucking psychiatrist, psychologist there to say, oh no, satanic ritual abuse basically is a condition of schizophrenia and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But they weren't saying that about the pedophilia, because the pedophilia is something that they want to get over the line and legalise. But when it comes to the ritual abuse, that's just going to spoil the whole fucking party for them. But here they are in Australia trying to say that and say, to basically make a sort of a precedent to say that all people that mention satanic ritual abuse, it's not real. Well, sorry, Australian fucking criminal fucking government, have a look. London Metropolitan Police, they have a record of satanic ritual abuse. It may be only 10
I
cases.
see. So you're sort of they're trying to separate the issues
Yes.
of paedophilia and abuse to make it look like paedophilia is a healthy, normal orientation.
Yeah, because they're hoping to get that one over the line. As you know, that's part of the New World Order agenda. You know,
Yes, right. Well, I think that as a final point, what I'm going to say is, or what I'm going to rather question, is where does the authority of these psychiatrists, who are obviously lackeys for this pervachy, where does their authority come from? Because when you really look into it, they have taken a free ride on the reputation of 20th century psychology, and that free ride that they have taken is not being accurately deconstructed by anybody in terms of it their entire science being fraudulent and based on chemical torture and MK Ultra, which traces to Nazi torture methods and experiments by the likes of the Angel of Death, Joseph Mengele. So I think it's very important to question what are the roots of psychiatry, because it's obviously being used.
It's literally like a side attraction of eugenics. You know, it's one of the strands of eugenics. And
yeah,
I even said that to the psychiatrist up the fucking hospital, point blank to him. And, you know, he's just got nothing to say.
Because the public,
you know, again,
the public is not aware that psychiatry and psychology are not the same thing.
Well, the thing is that psychiatry was always a quasi fucking quackademia sort of fringe sort of thing, until the Rockefellers basically sponsored it into fucking existence continually. Okay?
Yeah.
And
they had to really work to get psychiatry, which is such a pseudoscience, over the line, as well as the pseudoscientific view that
it's full human
pedophilia is natural.
Well, it's full of human butchery, because literally, with the way that they got the laws now, with the psychiatrists that are working for the government, okay, they literally made these mental health laws in 2007. That's a kangaroo court that basically can convict anyone to basically being forced medicated, okay? Now, that goes against the Australian Constitution regarding the forced medication, and it says in the Australian Constitution that basically if a state law and a federal law are at odds with each other, the federal law proceeds over the state law. So whoever created the state laws in New South Wales and a few other states to do forced medication, it's going against the Australian Constitution, and it's also going against the Nuremberg Code. So basically, the 2 times I've been jabbed so far are by laws that have been made by fucking criminals in the state of New South Wales that put this over the line. And you can thank fucking Bob Carr, the fucking pedophile piece of fucking shit, who basically gave all the local courts and the small courts Supreme Court fucking powers when he was in office so they could do all this stuff. Like literally, you go into this like kangaroo court, and there's just this one person who's presiding over it, and you're in a back room in a psychiatry ward, or you're in a video sort of situation, or they're doing it over the phone, and it's already a done deal in the sense of regardless of what you say in your defence or anything, they already know the outcome of what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion, which again is and it's I mean, if it's a foregone conclusion, that's solid. That's a solid evidence that this is pseudoscience, because real science doesn't make foregone conclusions. It takes into account evidence, experimentation, results, and then makes the conclusion.
You know, and they're so fucking pretarded, these medical people and psychologists that are all fucking brainwashed by big pharma indoctrination, that as soon as you say Freemasons and this, that, and the other, and you explain it logically, they just straight up go, oh, conspiracy theories, they just start on carrying on like fucking little belligerent children themselves.
Yeah, well, it's a very important issue, because we are just going to see more and more and more empowerment of this psychiatric pseudoscience, which is actually a kind of totalitarian torture chamber.
This is the thing. Dr. Richard Day, in 1969 or 7, I think it was, gave this lecture at the Rockefeller Foundation to all of these specialists, and he told them all to put their pens and papers down, because he was going to tell them what was going to be happening in the next 50 years of medicine, how medicine would be militarized and medical people would become the new authorities, just like police. And that's exactly what has happened since. Everything that was said was by this Dr. Richard Day was recorded by a certain specialist at the time, who ignored him and basically started writing down notes. And then 20 years later, in 1988, he released it all, and it's all on YouTube. It's called Day of the Barbarians, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And everything he said back then in the 80s of what he heard in the 60s, it's all happened. Yeah. It's all happened.
And I think
dystopian sort of medical military fucking police, and now these psychiatrists with these fucking incorrect mandated laws that are against Nuremberg Code and the Australian Constitution and stuff like that, is literally these cunts are playing fucking God with your life, and they're fucking incompetent and fucking inept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to see, we're already seeing.
How you play God with my life, and I do not want to be your fucking customer for life. I've said that, but I've not said it with as much sort of vigour and passion as I'm saying at the moment. I put myself in, I'm polite at the moment, because we need political correctness, and if you show any little bit of anger, it means that you're mentally unwell. Hide behind tribe fucking faggot.
But you can actually argue the opposite, in that if you become angry at injustices and crimes against you, you're actually psychologically healthy.
That's right. It's like, if you're not angry at what these fucking pedophiles and Freemasons and secret society Satanists do, eating babies and all the fucking rest of it, and the rituals and all the other depraved fucking shit. If you're not angry about shit like that affects us all in the greater community, which I call the blue flame of anger, and not the petty red flame of anger that the fucking homosexuals start getting upset about trivial little fucking shit that doesn't matter all the time, and that's part of their character, so people have to put it up with it. But when people like us fucking lose, get sick of it and put our foot down and go, fuck this shit, they say we're fucking mentally ill because we have a greater concern for the greater community and our children of the future and stuff, and you're not angry about this fucking shit. Then I say, what is your fucking problem? What is wrong with you people?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that psychiatry has become. I think that psychiatry has become a sort of exoteric satanic priesthood, and one of the things that's now happening is the installation of mental health wings in the police, which I think is very disturbing, because it is part of the evolution of totalitarianism, the removal of free will with psychiatric drugging, and so forth. And I think that we also need to be very aware of the role of this psychiatric pseudoscience
Yes.
in COVID, in terms of the kinds of accusations of mental health problems that will be levied against people who object to being essentially to being vaccinated against their will.
Yeah. And I'll just say that my anger, my righteous anger, blue flame of anger, that concerns all of us and the community and stuff like that, well, my anger and my ability to smash them with their own cricket bat that I've had practice with through the voice to skull, to the point that they're fucking shit scared of me now and they don't know what to do. Okay?
Yeah.
Literally, my anger is worse than the worst fucking satanic fucking psychopaths there is, but yet I'm fucking sane and they're not.
Yeah.
I can direct that into actually creating beauty and goodness and literally standing firm and saying no against all of their fucking bullshit and lies and criminality. And this is where we need more real men to stand up again, because they've literally feminized all the fucking men in society.
Very true, very true.
And if enough men like me stand up and actually really speak their soul and really be lucid about this, and there is a time to say fuck this, I'm not saying you swear all the time, but there's a time to say it and there's a time to be angry, and the way that you time it and deliver it, well, it's everything, isn't it? And it just shows that you're fucking normal and that you're so passionate about life. And these people are a fucking death cult.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is an anti-life cult, an anti-life process, and a process of destroying the human soul, so that these reptoids or non-human beings can then take us all over.
Exactly. And if we don't stand up to them, that's the end of humanity, because this is their end game at the moment. We're right in it right now. You know, this is the start of their Bible predictive programming, that if no one believed in this shit, it wouldn't actually manifest the future that they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much for your time. We've made 3.5 hours on this chat. I'm really appreciative of you and the enormous journey that you've had with all of these experiences, and I'm sure that a lot of people in the court system and a lot of people in the public as well stand to learn a lot from everything
and
that
I'll
you've
just say
taken
this
time to share.
I've got plenty of names to name from these rituals that are not just from me, from Stanley, who's now dead. Okay, he gave me a list.
Do you want to send me a list?
Well, I'm just going to say it now for the record. Okay.
Go ahead.
For the actual court to say there is further information coming, and this is only just the start.
Great.
Okay. We've defined these fucking things on many, many levels.
Or we've defined these crimes.
Yeah, these crimes, yep. And then I have the ex-Montauk programmer who's given a whole list of names for when he was on the door as security at that ritual. Okay. And he wasn't memory wiped. He still has memories of it all. And basically speaking, I've got a whole list just from those two before I even give my list of what I remember. And the thing is that, sure, I was a young child. I didn't know who most of these fucking people were as a young child. But as I've come to grow older and I have memory recall about these people, I've started working out who some of these people are. And that's just a totally normal thing. And I'll admit, at that age, you only just recognise people from what you observed, but you don't know who they are as a little child. It's like that professor. He looked like a fucking Rothschild. He had the features of a Rothschild genetically, the way he operated, blah, blah, blah. But still to this day, I do not know his fucking name, and I fucking will find it out eventually. And
yeah, I look forward to hearing that.
yeah, so basically to people who are saying, oh, how would you remember or know the names of the child? Yeah, that's all valid. But when you do a life of investigation, a whole life making sense of it all and chasing it down like a detective, doing better detective work than most fucking lazy fucking police at the moment, that the police in New South Wales here, it's a fucking joke. It's like a customer service fucking call centre. They don't fucking get off their fucking ass. You know, all they're doing is protecting the property of fucking corporate criminals and putting that before the safety and welfare of the fucking people. That's fucked.
Amazing.
They're high odds for the fucking corporate criminals, and that's got to fucking change.
Yeah, for sure, man. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time, and I'll look forward to communicating with you again.
Okay then, brother. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so kindly.
All right, bro. Thanks a lot, man. Bye-bye.
Ciao.